OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
All right, very welcome along this Tuesday morning. It is OTB AM. We're here with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. Eoin with you every morning on Ireland Sports Breakfast Show. As ever, we want to hear from you. 087 9 180 180. And we're counting down all the way to our big game against Andorra. We're very excited about this, Eoin. A mountaintop? Is that? Am I right? I mean, I know people go skiing there. It's somewhere around Catalonia, is it?
You just used the Liechtenstein description and copied and pasted it for Andorra.
A little bit.
Probably factually correct.
Do you go skiing in Liechtenstein? I don't know.
I don't know. A mountaintop is certainly how it's being described. Is Andorra more of a mountain slope? Potentially, you can certainly go skiing there. I know that for sure. I've never been skiing, but I know for a fact that you can go skiing in Andorra. I know for a fact that it's in the Pyrenees and that we've played them a hell of a lot of times in the past when we used them as a springboard for a general sense of national confidence.
Okay, so we drew 0 out Liechtenstein once. What's our record like against Andorra here, putting you on the spot?
Oh, you've really put me on the spot there. I presume it's 100%. I don't remember any national shame a la Cyprus or close to shame like San Marino or Liechtenstein, as you say, or Macedonia or Luxembourg.
How many times do you think we've played them?
I would say that we've played them 6 times. I'd say there's been 3 qualifying campaigns.
4.
4, so there's only been 2 qualifying campaigns. There's a 1-0 in there somewhere by the sound of that.
Well, there's a 3-0. We beat them 3-0 in 2001, and then we beat them 3-1 at home in 2001, in April 2001. We had a good team around that time.
Did it take the lead that day?
I don't.
Am I right in saying that? One game?
I accidentally clicked on a thing and it turned into an ad.
I might be imagining something completely different there, but suddenly memories of Andorra stress come flooding back for those few minutes.
Now, hang on. We should not be expecting to hammer this team if our Ireland team that day, Shea Given, Gary Kelly, Gary Breen, Gary Doherty, Richard Dunn, Kevin Kilbany, Ian Hart, Matt Holland, Mark Kinsella, Mark Kennedy and David Connolly. Roy Keane did not show up for this, but yes, they took the lead.
Yeah.
Ildefons Lima.
Right, okay. It must have just been some sort of set piece or something like that. That does ring a slight bell. I'm sure people will remember that game much clearer than I do.
Kevin Kilbane scored our equaliser.
Right.
One of those what's rare is beautiful moments in Irish football history.
Like, it wasn't a penalty, was it?
No, it definitely wasn't a penalty.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a bit of a dig there.
I mean, it just ruined my childhood is all, not getting to the 2002 quarter-final. I'm not going to lie, like you talk about how excited are we for the international window reopening for the Republic of Ireland. I did have a look at the table to see how impossible would this be to qualify for the 2022 FIFA World Cup, because after Luxembourg, you wouldn't dare suggest that we could potentially even come within an inch of qualifying for this thing. We're 7 points off the top of the table with a game in hand. 7 points off Serbia in second with a game in hand. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying we're going to qualify. I'm not saying we're going to come close to qualifying or anything like that. All I'm saying is that if we win our game in hand, we'll be 4 points off Serbia in second. This is it. The time is now. The new international window always brings moments of positivity, but this moment of positivity is definitely going to be real.
After these back-to-back games, you think that we're going to have some hope, new hope, a Star Wars themed new hope. Who's the Jedi Master here in this thing? It needs to be somebody on the field of play, preferably.
Okay. So you can't pick Stephen Kenny as an answer to
well,
this. Who is the Jedi Master going to be? I would say Caoimhín Kelleher could be the Jedi Master, conjuring things from between the sticks, starting moves, using all that experience that we've seen from the Champions League this year back to full fitness, hopefully, and hopefully we'll see him actually get a few senior minutes. Could Andrew Omobamidele be the Jedi Master at centre back? Could, like, John Egan is back, so could he just give the young kid a chance beside the experienced hand of John Egan? He may not go that way, but that could be a very exciting thing to say. Could Jamie McGrath St Mirren be a potential Jedi Master in midfield, an attacking midfielder who's scored a lot of goals for his team this season? Maybe this is what we're looking at. Those 3 Jedis to take down the Death Star that is the looming threat of missing out on another World Cup. That's what we're looking at this week.
Wow, Kilbane scored in the return tie as well. That is interesting. So we beat them 3-1 and then we beat them out there 2-0. No, hang on, sorry. We beat them 3-0 out there and we beat them 3-1 here. So I'm just trying to find what the story was, the 3-0 out there.
So at least a quarter of his international goals came against Andorra.
Wow, that is amazing. Ian Hart scored a penalty that day. Good man, Ian. Yeah, able to stick in those penalties, giving everybody a false sense of security when you're standing over them again. Ian Hart scored, Matt Holland and Kevin Kilban. There you go. And there was that game was played in Barcelona. We didn't even play that one in Andorra at the time. So, look, it's very difficult to get excited about this, isn't it? I mean, it's better that it's a friendly against a team who aren't very good because we might win it. But equally, I mean, if this was a friendly against a mediocre team and we lost, would that be better than if they can't score against Andorra? What happens?
Oh, well, obviously, if it's a disastrous result against Andorra, then no, then it becomes something. Like, this is not going... I'm not sure what the reaction to the Luxembourg game would have been had Ireland won, but I suspect it wouldn't have been as spoken about had Ireland won. That is a fact. It became a much bigger story because Ireland lost that game, and I suspect on a smaller scale that will be the case with Andorra this week. It is only a friendly. The result will not matter if Ireland win. They're expected to win. This is a team that's ranked 158th in the world. It would be. Hang on.
Republic of Ireland 3, Andorra 1 in 2010. So the first two games were in 2001, right? In qualifying for the World Cup in 2002. The next time we had a qualifying game against them was in 2010. Who scored the opening goal?
Kevin Kilban.
Kevin Kilban!
Right, so 3 out of his 8.
Slayer of Andorra.
Goals. Wow, God, can we bring him out of retirement? Can we charter a plane from Canada?
Wait, this should have been Kilban week on OTB. For God's sake, this is like here. And so, tell us again about how you scored against mighty Andorra.
Wow. Okay. This is we need some tips. This is good. We've got some. We can get some insight into how to beat Andorra later on this week.
The team. This is Trapattoni, right? This is his campaign. Shay Given in goals. John O'Shea, Sean St. Ledger, Richard Dunn, Kevin Kilban. That's your back four. Paul Green, Liam Lawrence, Aidan McGeady, Glenn Whelan, Kevin Doyle, and Robbie Keane. Would that team beat our current team, and what would the score be?
Probably 3-1.
Well, that's what they beat Andorra by that night. So what you're saying is our current team are about as good as Andorra were in 2010.
I think, I mean, like, that Ireland team did have an ability to, like, you got to be kind of careful how you speak about it because they only qualified for Euro 2012 in the end and did essentially not qualify for any other tournament. But there was a sense that they did kind of play up to their opposition at times. That, okay, maybe Ireland at the moment are nowhere near the fearsome outfit that they used to be, but I'm sure that Ireland team would have stepped up for this Ireland team more so than they would have done for that Andorra team, for example. So it's a better team than this Ireland squad, no question about it.
Yeah.
Much better. It's a much better squad.
That team is better, definitely. I don't know how much better they are. They're definitely better. They're players who were playing in the Premier League at that point, I suppose.
Yeah, and like there is a lot of hope around a lot of these Ireland players at the moment. I think what's kind of been...
Sorry, what am I saying? They're way better in terms of the quality of football that they've played at the highest level. That's a way better team, way more experienced, and also still they managed to pick Paul Green a lot.
And not not qualify for as many tournaments as they should have done. I'll always say that about that generation of Irish footballers. It is a shame. What we're starting to realise, I think, recently is that it's kind of hard to make it as a footballer, that we've seen a lot of these promising Irish players come through and we're wondering when the kick is going to happen for a lot of them at club level. Now, in fairness, a lot of these players are so young that kick is not expected to happen for a while, but there have been moments of hope, maybe a little bit of magic dust sprinkles across the Ireland squad over the last couple of years, and even if they're getting beaten or not getting 3 points in games, you come away from international window saying that guy, they're about to have a good few months in their own club career and things are going to go well for them and they'll be in a better place come the international window. And that just hasn't really materialised for a number of reasons, whether it's been injury, whether it's been COVID, obviously, which has hampered Ireland quite a bit. But then there's also the reality of modern football, which is that it's bloody hard to make that step up and actually be playing at a high enough level a level that will actually allow you to make that step up and become a top-class player. The sort of player that was in every line of that team, in that Ireland team in 2010. So we're in this place at the moment where we're kind of sitting on our hands waiting for this generation to hopefully become really good.
Yeah,
and nobody knows the answer to that.
I think Stephen Kenny made the point about the lost generation of Irish footballers, and what's that down to? You know, it's not just down to the international managers. It was certainly reported on. This was a dig at previous international managers not bringing players through, but they brought through largely what was available to them, and you'd have to say that it was really a dig at the underage structures 2 decades ago, when those kids were 9, 10, 11, 12, and the fact that they were not brought through because the coaching structures weren't there. So, you know, there's a lot of people saying, well, what have the Dutch Masters been doing with Irish football over the last decade or so? But all of a sudden there's a slew of players coming through between the ages of 17 and 20, and they're all being fast-tracked into the national side. And it's going to be a long, painful period for them to get to 23, 24 and have a bunch of caps under their belt and feel confident and comfortable in international football and hopefully have some success at club level. But that's the period we're in at the moment, where it's pretty grim, and, you know, it's going to take a little bit of a miracle for this team to have success in the short term, because we just don't have any of the players. We don't have any players playing regularly week in, week out in the top 5, 6 clubs. In England, we don't have any players playing week in, week out really well at the moment and fully fit. There's very few players who were in the running for, like, player of the season in the championship for their own clubs, for example, which traditionally we would have had players, you know, I mean, there were 2 or 3 Irish players in the team of the year at various stages when Big Jack, Mick McCarthy were the managers of the team. We're nowhere near that at the moment. So that's why it's difficult to get too excited about it. But maybe that this generation of footballers are exciting. And, you know, it reflects a very changed Ireland at the moment. And that's cool. That's interesting. That's certainly something worth getting behind.
Absolutely. Like, it is interesting that what we're seeing at the top of the championship now is, with the exception, obviously, of a couple of young players here or there, some of the more notable top of the championship players are kind of the likes of Sheahan Long and Conor Howerhan, players that are at the opposite end of their career and maybe looking for one last kick out of their career. With Howerhan, it's obviously different to Sheahan Long, but certainly that's the case with Sheahan Long, that we don't have that cream of the crop in that division just yet. It'll happen eventually, and again, a couple of those players like Darragh O'Shea and Omar Bamidele have actually got promoted and are all of a sudden grafting at the bottom of the Premier League. Obviously, O'Shea's gone the other way. So that's a positive. There are green shoots in a couple of different places. What's going to happen is that Ireland are going to get a win soon, and it'll seem really significant, and then they'll lose a game that they shouldn't lose, and it'll feel like, oh, that was a false dawn. But in actual fact, it probably wasn't. The dawn probably isn't going to be identifiable via one specific results, but a run of results will come at some point in the next few years. Who knows when it's going to happen, but there will have to be an uptick eventually, because somebody is bound to have been right about some of these players. They can't have been, like, we can't have just stumbled upon a group of players who's been spoken about so glowingly, and for them all to end up being flops. That's not going to happen. There will be players who come through out of this generation who are good enough to be Premier League players.
Okay. 7:44 this morning here on OTB AM. We'd love to hear from you. 087 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Graham Hunter's standing by in about 10 minutes. We're going to talk to him about a bunch of different things. The England right back is going to come up. Zidane's going to come up. Aguero is going to come up, and loads more. If there's anything you'd like to get off your chest, you want to ask Graham about Guardiola, indeed now would be a good time to do that as well. We're running through the sports pages at 8:10. Going to talk about the Czech Republic in our Euros cheat sheet. Scotland are next, by the way. And then Nicole Turner, Paralympian swimmer, is going to talk to us at 8:45. We've got power rankings, the first GAA power rankings of the year. The worst lot in Irish sports media. Some call it genius. You can decide yourself. And then Pat Nevin's thoughts on a Champions League victory for Chelsea at 9:30 this morning, coming your way too. As I said, 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. Let's get into our first cheat sheet this morning. How does this work, Eoin? Who are we doing?
Basically, a 90-second bluffer's guide to every single team in the Euros. We are we're just over halfway through this at this point. We did England and Croatia last Friday. You can go back onto YouTube and check out all the ones that we've done so far. We're going into the second half of Group D today, which is going to see Scotland and Czech Republic up. We're going to start with Scotland. Let's get ourselves 90 seconds to go through the cheat sheet. So, 23 years since their last appearance at a major tournament, Scotland are back at the Euros. They finished third in their qualifying group, 15 points behind Belgium, 9 points off Russia. But praise the Lord for the Nations League. A penalty shootout win against Israel and another penalty shootout win against Serbia booked Scotland's ticket to Scotland. They've got home advantage for 2 of their group games, but on June the 18th, put this in your diary, it is England versus Scotland at Wembley, 25 years on from Uri Geller using Wingardium Leviosa on Gary McAllister's football. If points were given out for being a sound bunch of lads, Scotland would top this group, but the fact of the matter is that they have never got out of a group at a major tournament. That being said, this bunch of Scotland players, which includes Andy Robertson, Kieran Tierney and Scott McTominay, suddenly looks like their best team of this century so far. And after teaming up with Fred in an attempt to conquer the world, McTominay has actually largely been used in a back 3 by Steve Clarke in recent matches. And this has been quite a spell for Clarke as well. On a coaching level, we all tend to associate him with being Jose's assistant in his first stint at Chelsea and then taking West Brom to their highest ever Premier League finish a few years later. But his last job before the national gig was with Kilmarnock, where he took them to third in the Scottish Premiership in 2019 and picked up all of the Manager of the Year awards. He is now the first man since Craig Brown to take Scotland to a major tournament. As ever, let's have a look at the kits. This is the home kit. Nice motion there. Evoking memories of waves, maybe. Something, I don't know, something representative of the sea. And then there is the away kit. Diagonal stripes, because why not? It doesn't move me.
No.
Either of those kits.
No, I think that the Scotland kit could be really amazing, but they're not good versions of it. What about the team though, Eoin? What about the team? Tell us, this is a good team. This is the opposite of us. This has good players playing really well, in contention for their player of the year at their respective clubs, doing good things on the highlight. You'd see them on Match of the Day from time to time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good. How many Match of the Day highlights is a country getting is a good indicator of a team in this part of the world and how well they're going to do at a tournament. Like, it does sort of feel that this happens a little bit by accident with Scotland. Like, obviously, one of their worst spells and in recent memory comes when Celtic and Rangers are doing quite well at the start of this century, and you'd wonder if that actually is a direct link to the national team's fortunes, where they're signing players from around Europe and maybe the local talent doesn't get enough of a shot. Maybe with Rangers and their struggles and Celtic perhaps not being the force that they were 15 years ago or 10 years ago, maybe that's helped things, but it does feel that this generation has kind of surprised people that they do have someone like Andy Robertson who has all of a sudden become one of the best full-backs in the world. I don't think Tierney's progression has surprised anybody who's watched Celtic over the years. He's obviously come through at Arsenal and become Arsenal's most important player, to be honest with you.
How did they get them in the team together?
Well, I mean, this is a very similar question to how do you get Matt Doherty and Seamus Coleman in the team together?
It's a slightly higher level issue that they have, right?
It is, but it felt like a similar problem under Mick McCarthy and maybe in early Stephen Kenny. Like, it did feel that like Matt Doherty was one of the best right wing backs in the league at that point, and Seamus Coleman was Seamus Coleman. So back then it felt like a similar enough thing. What Scotland have done is play a back 3, and Kieran Tierney plays on the left of the back 3 and Andy Robertson is on the left wing. In front of them, they've got Ryan Fraser on the left of a front 3, so like, expect Scotland to just be like, screw you to the right-hand side of their entire pitch. We're playing the ball on the left-hand side because they are clearly our best players. It is, as I mentioned there, the Scott McTominay decision to play him on the right of the back 3 it seems like a mad one, but when Scotland are in possession against weaker teams, obviously Scott McTominay just steps up into midfield and it makes a bit of sense. Now, in fairness, he has been played in midfield a few times, so don't be surprised if he does step up back into midfield, especially given the fact that the 3 teams that they're expected to play, 2 of them, especially England and Croatia, are expected to beat Scotland. So maybe that change happens. But alongside Grant Hanley and Kieran Tierney, that is a pretty well stacked back 3.
Where's the England-Scotland game?
The England-Scotland game is in Wembley.
Right.
So all of England's games, with the exception of their quarter-final, are in Wembley. This is a home tournament for them. One thing I would love to see, it's not going to happen this tournament, is a midfield 3 of McTominay, McGinn, who scored 7 goals in qualifying, by the way, their top scorer, and Billy Gilmour in a midfield 3 for Scotland. Obviously, their formation means they probably will never play a midfield 3, but maybe it's one for the future. Gilmour is in the squad. He hasn't played for Scotland. He's obviously been injured a lot this season. You suspect if he wasn't so injured. He would have been a bigger part of Chelsea's season under Frank Lampard, and he probably would have been a bigger part of Scotland's qualification, but he's still a kid, and he's certainly one for the future. Outside of that, really, like, I mean, you look at that midfield, and even some of the backups they have are pretty good. John Fleck, Stuart Armstrong are in the squad. Callum McGregor and John McGinn are probably going to be the two that actually start in midfield. But you're right, like you look across the Premier League and it's like, recognise that guy, recognise that guy, recognise that guy, and that just goes for their bench. They're in a really strong place, and like the expectation in Scotland is that they can really give this group a good rattle. What do you think? Where? Give me a prediction. I think they'll finish third in this group, but I think they'll go home. I think this will be or stay at home. I think this will be the group where the third place team does not go through, unfortunately, because it's just so good. I think that we'll get to the Czech Republic later. They've got some really good quality coming through as well, and they're starting to come out of their slumber a little bit. And England and Croatia are obviously top class. So what you need is somebody who's going to lose all their games at the bottom of your group. And whoever's in third gets 3 points and gets out of the group. I wouldn't be surprised if Scotland comes second with maybe 2 points. But if they get a win, I think they'll go through. But third place in their group and go home after the group stages, unfortunately. Graham Hunter, good morning to you. How are you?
How do you think I am? I've just had to sit and listen to that. No, it's as usual, by honest, articulately put. Having lived in Spain for 20 years, I wouldn't tout myself as an expert in the Scotland national team. I had the great good fortune of spending a day and a half with them at the weekend, and measuring up what Eoin was saying there compared to what Steve Clark was telling me about the system of three at the back. Why McTominay sometimes steps in there. I'm not certain that he will in this instance. Watching as well the good humour, I spoke or worked with every person in the squad apart from Gilroy and McTominay, who were still to arrive. And you know, the one thing that I didn't hear there from on that comparing to my perspective is goals. I think that we are now a really well coached side, really well organised side, far more difficult to beat, irrespective of the early experiences of Steve Clark at hands of Belgium and Russia. And what the key thing to whether Scotland can finish second or third, and because I don't see them winning the group, I think that's at this stage too big an ask. However, not impossible. I don't see it as impossible that they win the group. And can they tuck away chances such that their ability to organise and to defend and to lower the goal count against counts for wins? I think that's the number one problem. And let's see what Che Adams brings. Let's see if young Nisbet has his moments. My preferred option is that the connection between Lyndon Dykes and Ryan Fraser probably is the thing to rely upon. Lee Griffiths not being fit enough or not having had enough games is a blow because he's a natural goal scorer. So let's wait and see. They beat the Czechs a couple of seasons ago at home. I see no reason why they can't beat that. I think that Croatia are not significantly better than Serbia, in my humble opinion. And although it was a little bit nerve-wracking, we went through in Serbia on penalties. So I think Eoin's analysis, it was pretty much on the spot. It's not impossible that this group becomes the first ever to go through a qualification group in a tournament, but it'll be knife edge as usual.
I mean, at least you're there and have many things to be excited about. And as we were saying, I think probably before you came on, loads of great young players who are actually playing really well. You have, a bunch of very talented players who are all in the reckoning for their own club's Player of the Year.
This is true, Jerry. You remind me of the last time Aberdeen went to a final, and I met up for a couple of drinks with Kevin Bridges. I hope Kevin's famous in your country, who's a mad Celtic fan. So we had a couple of drinks, and he reached over and he patted me on the head. You've done very well to get this far, your club. So that feels a little.
No, it's jealousy. It's pure, unadulterated jealousy on my part, as opposed to.
Okay, but if you take what you and Eoin were both saying about the ranks through the squad of Scotland, it reminds me of watching Ireland from afar. Actually, travelling to go with Ireland around USA '94. If you looked at your greatest teams, Jack Charlton becomes something of an iconic figure, yes. But right through each division, there were players of high quality. I mean, in your case, really high quality occasionally, but they were well fired in competitive teams up in the top of the league in England. Now there's something resembling that in the Scotland squad. I think that's the key factor, that all of the good players upon whom Steve Clarke will first look to rely have gone through competitive seasons repeatedly with the top clubs in Scotland in the Champions League or the Europa League, but have repeatedly gone through seasons at English clubs with exceptional coaching. That's one of the points Steve Clarke made to me. I like the way that he's taken and moulded a good group. And I asked him if he found the players he was working with tactically astute, and he said thoroughly they were. That the things he's trying to tell them in limited time as an international manager are soaking in really quickly, because the vast majority of them are working in high-pressure atmosphere, week in, week out, for coaches who teach them things. I think we are in an era of far more outright strategy, where players are asked to be more mentally gymnastic about tactical concepts, and therefore he feels that he's been gifted with a group who can receive and apply his instructions quickly, and I like that. And we may not be dazzlingly beautiful to watch, but I think we're credible now, and to add qualification to credibility would hypothetically be a very exciting summer.
Yeah. Well, look, I think a lot of people from this part of the world will be cheering them on for sure. Can I just? There's a big day today for the Euros. The debate about which of England's amazing right backs will end up being selected or not. Kieran Trippier is somebody who obviously has played and won a title this year in Spain. People are kind of saying, we're hearing it a lot, he's been absolutely sensational this year, but I don't think everybody who's saying that has seen as much of Kieran Trippier as they might have. So what is the truth? What kind of a season did Trippier have in La Liga?
The quality of his link play and positioning and use of the ball was very, very high indeed. He often played as a wing-back, rather often, I say, not predominantly. The predominant system that Atleti used for about 46% of the games was 4-4-2, or a variety of it, if you want to call it 1-1 up front, but he was a right-back, effectively. But a right-back, and I think this is important, who was asked to play as a wing-back. Often that happens. You do a wing-back's job, you play up and down as regularly as a wing-back in a five. That's a demanding task, because there's even less room for error in your timing of your runs, your choice of where to start them, how quickly you can get back. If you're playing as a wing-back, you've got four. It's very, very demanding. So he stands out for that. His use of the ball is still very, very high class. Physically, for example, I thought that his ban was unjust. He came back from his ban with a lot of weeks not playing against Real Madrid in the second of the two Madrid derbies, and he was exceptional. It was the standout game of the season that he gave, for my taste. I would certainly take him. I'm aware, although I didn't watch as much of him at Spurs, I'm aware that people say, well, some of the same debate that's happening around Trent Alexander-Arnold right now, defensively, blah, blah, blah. Trippier's defending seemed to me to be, there were no standout errors, I wouldn't have said. My perspective on him is that he's a tremendous fighter, a real terrier, an aggressive, competitive guy, and I think he's changed over a couple of years under Cholo Simeone. And albeit that I'd be appalled if Trent Alexander-Arnold doesn't go. And it's clear that Reece James is in an exceptional form and is physically extremely important to the team. Trippier and Trent Alexander-Arnold are such good footballers, and in the case of Trent, is such a good user of the ball. So in my view, I take Trent and Trippier and Reece James for sure, simply because Trent Alexander-Arnold can play in such a different style, I think, for the other two, and in so many more positions. So it's a huge debate, I know, but you asked me about Trippier, and without question, he was one of the standout footballers for Atleti and winning the title for only the third time in 44 years.
So it comes down to which one are you leaving out then? I do think that that's the dilemma that people are having, that Walker is a banker because he's going to play on the right of a three. It sounds like Trippier could actually be the starter, Graham, so it is essentially a Reece James versus Trent Alexander-Arnold debate, which really is a difficult one for Gareth Southgate.
It is a difficult one, and listen, the first thing to say is that one of the great things that managers have to do for their payslip is take brutal decisions, take them quickly, and as long as you've assessed the consequences, then damn the criticism, to hell. That's the thing that Ferguson has always said about one of the things that separated me from the pack was I looked at a thorny decision, I weighed up the consequences and I took it. I didn't dilly-dally on it, and you don't need to always get it right. You need to get as high a percentage as possible right, but the thing is, don't prevaricate, do your business on the pot, don't sit on it forever. So I'm not certain that if they were foolish enough to make me England manager, I wouldn't take all of them. In fact, I probably would, simply because there's so many different positional things you can do with them. And the one thing that I thoroughly believe in across tournaments is that there will be guys that sit on the bench and don't really get any playing time. But if you look at those four, positionally, I think there's a lot of room for adaptation. But try your hardest. And I mean, listen, I've been watching tournaments since the first tournament I remember was 1970. Analysing them and thinking about them in depth for many, many, many years, professionally and as a fan. Don't leave out good footballers. You leave out somebody who maybe is out of form, fine, hasn't been playing for the team, even though you'd love them to have been, and you'd love to leave them out. Somebody who's just back from injury and you're risking it, predominantly leave them out. Not always, but predominantly. They won't have reached ramming speed for a tournament. If you've got four good footballers in one position, two or three of whom can change positions and give you other things, but one of whom opens games up and makes you goals. Goals change the mentality in the squad, not just positions in games and qualification from groups and winning tournaments. The message for me is that there's another sacrifice to be made in a different position, as far as I'm concerned, and all four of them should go.
That makes a lot of sense. The whole goals thing, it's an overwhelming reason to bring Trent, because we've seen the impact that he's capable of having, and if you're a good manager, you should be able to get that out of him. Let's move on, because there's about 5 or 6 other things that I just wanted to get your quick takes on. Zidane obviously publishes his open letter, wins back the popular vote from any of the Madrid fans who might have been like, oh, I forgot that you were one of our greatest ever players and you won all those Champions Leagues and this crowd are still in charge. What a shower of charlatans they were that ran you out of our club. We love you, Zizou. It was as these things go, it was pretty tame ultimately, but it was always coming, and he riddled the body of the president with metaphorical bullets. I presume we haven't seen the last of Zizou as a manager?
First of all, I think I've got a slightly different take on the letter that he wrote in Diario AS, whereby, number one, heaven bless sportsmen and women who, via whichever medium, are prepared to tell us their strong version of the truth. That's why there's an off-the-ball AM. That's why I've been able to spend my life in the industry that I love. Will there be another point of view from Florentino Perez? Yes, and he's used exactly the means that Zidane criticised to show it today. He's briefed Marca Florentino Perez. So Marca's front page on a day when the under-21s went through in the European Championship, and shortly after Barcelona won a treble, and with Kun Aguero arriving, with new manager, front page of Marca is Madrid are very disappointed. Oh, bollocks to you, if I can say that at this time in the morning. In Zidane's letter, first of all, he didn't do it via the club because he wanted control. Secondly, he makes a very clear point: the best thing in his life, as far as he's concerned, was being picked to play and then manage Real Madrid. And he specifically thanks Florentino Perez for that. And then he says, there was a point in the season when I felt I was being undermined, because I know that the papers, when they run Zidane's job is in jeopardy, had that blessing from the president. In the middle of the season, neither the players nor I needed to know that the president was briefing the media rather than talking directly to me. And I felt, Zidane said, that they lacked memory. They lacked memory for the things, not that I won, the things I had consistently done with this squad. You see the players rescued time and time again when it felt like we were on, our last live of 9. The players rescued me. Thank you for that, because they know what I felt about them and I know what they felt about me. It's a really good letter, and it's constructive, Ger. Riddling with bullets maybe, but it's constructive. It points out the fact that if you have a manager, and he doesn't just say, poor old me, at all. He talks about the Madrid board and president being happy to forget about the need for stability and the need for support for a manager, and also a manager who's been denied reinforcements the previous summer. So he makes good constructive points via which, if anybody's listening, Real Madrid could become stronger. So for me, it's a much bigger event, and it's a much more interesting text. And chapeau, Zidane. I don't think Florentino Perez is at his sharpest right now. I think age is beginning to take a toll. And I think that Real Madrid, having seen him just re-elected unopposed, have got another difficulty there in the way that, because across his 21 years, the success ratio is extraordinary. Even though I'm not a particular direct fan of Florentino Perez, it is absolutely unavoidable that his methods, percentage-wise, pound for pound, have come good for his club. Is there a problem going forward? Zidane says so. I think he's right. I think he said it in a constructive way. And I forget that you added a rider on your question about seeing him back. Yeah. He'll be back for sure.
At Juve when that job comes next free, or France when that job comes next free, or is there something else? Is there, does he have to work? Because he's always worked at Real, we have the sense that that's what his future is. But is there a possibility that he fetches up somewhere completely random?
I've said on your show during the months when, I was certain that he was briefing that he was going, and the way he dodged questions about even wanting to stay for months in writing and talking about my suspicion, not knowledge, not a big news story. My suspicion was that he was leaving, and my suspicion is that that Deschamps will likely, not definitely, be replaced by Zidane after the Euros. We'll see. Again, that's a speculative pitching the story forward, but that's what I think Zidane wants to happen, and I think it will. I think that will happen.
There was a rumour, and look, I didn't get a chance to stack up where it was coming from, about Ancelotti perhaps being the next Madrid manager. And in many ways, that makes the most sense of some of the available candidates. What's the feeling in Marca and As and your own feeling about what's next?
Number one, that would surprise me a lot, the degree to which Florentino and Carlo Ancelotti drifted very firmly apart during the last season. The pain that Ancelotti felt at the way he was dismissed, having done an extraordinary job. But that doesn't feel right. That would surprise me hugely. The real front runners are, for example, the last time Zidane left, it was a high society wedding in Madrid in the summer. I was lucky that I had a friend there at the same table as Jose Antonio Sanchez, the general manager of Madrid, or general director, and Florentino Perez. Pochettino was at the same wedding. There was a point in which, when the meal was breaking down and the speech sub started, the tables mingled, and Poch went to speak to the two executives at Real Madrid, and they said to him, "When you renegotiated your contract recently, you didn't put a break clause in it, did you? A get-out clause?" He went, "No." He said, if you had, you'd already be the Madrid manager. They came for him then, couldn't get him from Spurs. I don't know whether Paris Saint-Germain would find a way to where they go next to let Pochettino go so quickly. But it's patently clear to me that Pochettino wants the Real Madrid job and would move to Paris Saint-Germain immediately. And there is an unscratched itch. How often in football, never mind other sports, there's an unscratched itch suddenly becomes scratchable as soon as the available opportunity arises. People tend not to forget in football, that guy scored against me, that manager looks good to me, I wanted him 3 years ago, again and now. He's the front runner. There are other candidates. It's absolutely clear. Conte at Real Madrid, it would just be explosive. It would be, I'm certain he'd make Real Madrid better. I'm certain he'd make them dangerous. But Conte and Florentino Perez, I think it would just be, two angry Scots in a phone booth on a Friday night with a bottle of whiskey between them. So no, don't see that. And Raul's the other runner, has been coaching the B team, has been doing well. It is a relatively favoured son of Florentino. Not an outright two-horse race, but those are the two leading candidates. Raul, legend of the club, and Poch in number one position at the moment, if anybody can find a way to crowbar him at Paris Saint-Germain.
Okay, that is really interesting. And all of those scenarios will actually make for plenty of the soap opera that we've come to know and love around Real Madrid. As the dust settles on the game of the weekend, what do you think happened to Pep?
Yeah, bloody hell, I wish I knew. I can't hide from the fact that I thought that City would win. I think that I don't have anything new to say about, particularly Fernandinho, not Rodri. In my opinion, he's stacked up a lot of games, but I still think he is. I'm a little bit concerned about his development, if I'm completely honest. But I think, never mind the fact that I was completely shocked when it looked as if Pep put out a side going, right, all the debate, all the Chelsea have beaten us, Tuchel's maybe my equal. How does City play? We're going to go out there and we're going to tear them apart. We're going to just shred them. I understand how to get this Chelsea team opened up. I'm going to put attacking players everywhere, and we're going to shred them. And we're not just going to win this, we're going to come away having said, we are Manchester City. That's what it feels like he decided. He just went, these guys are too mobile, too technical, too quick. We'll open them up. It didn't come close to happening. I thought that the halftime 1-0 was a 1-0 massacre. And again, you people like me, we say these things after the match. It's painful for managers who have all kind of intricate situations. They know their players, they plan, and we just opine. Okay, fine. But when Fernandinho comes on, again, for my taste, instantly it's like the structure's there. The movement, the way in which the pieces linked together, the way in which the chances were created, even across a game where Chelsea were undoubtedly the better side. For my taste, City probably had the better chances. I thought Rudiger's a central figure in any post-analysis because although I'm not certain you can send him off, it's like Ramos and Salah, isn't it? I completely contend that Ramos only meant to prevent to take Salah down and said, there you go, and it prevent a really dangerous counter. Rudiger was told, never let De Bruyne go past you, never let these players do exactly what Pep was asking them to do, which is create space, flood. And he steps in and it's a deliberate, really deliberate body check. Does that go straight to a red? But then you add in the damage that he's done, which the referee can't know instantly. Amber cards is something that gets talked about a lot over here. It's between a yellow and red. It was. And that had a massive game-changing effect, but also Rudiger's tackle. I really enjoyed the final. I've heard a lot of opinions that are different from mine. I thought it was a fascinating game. I'd signed for a lot of finals to look and feel like that. Were there shots raining everywhere with 5-goal share? No. But the amount of skill we saw, the amount of heroic stuff we saw, the Rudiger tackle on Phil Foden was astounding. Foden's finish off his left foot, if he chooses the base, I'm not criticising, if he chooses the right foot finish, he gets the shot away earlier. And Rudiger probably doesn't get there. But he wants to, because he's got technique, he wants to use the outs of his left foot and bend it past the keeper, where there's no chance Monty's going to reach it. Rudiger's tackle is gigantic. That, for me, was, with Mount's pass, goes down in the annals of European Cup final history. Absolutely extraordinary. I thought it was a remarkable decision from Pep. I thought that once he changed it to having Fernandinho there, Chelsea had fewer places to go, and City looked like they might turn it around and win it. He didn't. It was a mistake. They lost. He wipes his face. He wipes his hands. He picks himself up and he starts all over again.
Well, is this some Greek tragedy we're watching where his fatal flaw is obvious to all of us but not him, or is this just football where he made a mistake and actually it's not a catastrophe, it's literally just a mistake that a manager makes in selection, and that we're overreacting because we've seen it a couple of times from him and you piece these all together and it becomes the singular narrative, and that's a continuum, as opposed to this game is separate. It's a final. He's clearly got one of the best teams in world football at the moment. They're going to be again next season. The youth coming through are sensational, and you don't win every year. Like, what's the truth?
I think over my lifetime in sport, things have changed dramatically, and that I understand why people will say it's not good enough to have had, I think it was 3 semi-finals with Bayern Munich, and a quarter-final with Manchester City. Was that twice quarter-final? Yes, I think it was. I think Spurs and Eoin were both quarters, and now a final. Yet there were certainly times during my career when it would have been written as, look at that record, he's a natural winner, a trophy is coming soon. If you looked at Horse and you looked at the form and you went, fourth, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, second, you'd say there's a win coming soon. I'll put money on that Horse. Because it's Bayern Munich, because it's Manchester City, because it's Pep Guardiola, the critical analysis does change, in my opinion. He said in the Bayern Munich Real Madrid game where they got thrashed, I made a mistake. I listened to the players. I did what they asked me to. It was my mistake. He's assumed that. He said it out loud. The semi-final against Barcelona was something extraordinary. One of the best games I've ever seen the Neymar Suarez Messi partnership produce. And for 77 minutes, the first leg, where Lewandowski missed a couple of big chances. It's 0-0, and it's an epic game. And there's a rally in the second leg where Bayern Munich shoot ahead and then get clawed back. And that wasn't part of the narrative, so take it out. And the first part of the narrative, losing 1-0 at Bernabeu and then losing heavily at home, he said, look, I did screw that up. After which, he's 13 minutes from going through against Monaco, after which against Spurs, the ball clearly comes off. Probably their offside goal is correctly called, but the ball clearly comes off Fioretti, and the rules are changed after. Say that can't happen anymore. There's a bigger story than the single thread narrative about Pep overthinks. That's the narrative you're talking about, that he keeps getting himself into a muddle. I think rather than overthinking, I think he was over-ambitious against Chelsea. I think it stung him about the Tuchel's the new kid on the screen, and although they're still friends. And I asked him, I had an interview with them 6-7 days before the final. I said, look, have you shared too much with Tuchel? Does he know you too well through this friendship? And I went, hold on a second. In these chats, these dinners that we have, I've learned as much of him. It's been good for me. That's his point of view. So, I'm not going to be sitting here as I think some people see me as a kind of pet defender, somebody who always. I think he made a clear mistake. I think that it was once corrected, it almost brought them back into the final the next time. And secondly, it showed that the first half had been a mistake. It was equally a mistake not to change a half. So whether that fits into the way in which, for example, Lyon were peppered by Manchester City, and Dembele comes on, and particularly the goal on the break in a pandemic year, I'm unconvinced that there's one overriding narrative that he can't win the Champions League without Messi champion in it. I don't believe that. I think his record suggests that he will win it. I think his determination, his attention to detail will increase after this. And I think he's somebody who can learn from having got it wrong against Chelsea. But I will say that, in my opinion, if he could rerun that game, he wouldn't start without Fernandinho.
That makes sense. Graham, great to have you with us. Thanks a million. Cheers.
Great pleasure.
Graham Hunter giving us some thoughts there. What's your assessment now that we're this far out, Eoin?
I think it's interesting that he's used the phrase overthought rather than, or was overambitious rather than overthinking this, which I think maybe is close to the truth. I think that the overthinking line is always an interesting one. Is that possible? Like, what does overthinking actually? How does the decision-making process manifest itself in overthinking?
In the Lyon game, for example, you took too much cognizance of their abilities rather than just backing your own team to beat them. With this thing, it's actually backing your own team too much. And they're different. They're actually subtly different things, right?
Yeah, but is that overthinking it, or is that just thinking about it in the wrong way and arriving at a wrong decision? Like, overthinking would suggest that, like, he's like Archimedes, like going through the first idea of a theory that is going to shock humankind. Like, this is not, like, Pep Guardiola is not operating at a different plane to all other managers. Like, Thomas Tuchel is also an incredibly intelligent manager. Like, they're all at the very peak of their game. Pep Guardiola isn't, like, special in comparison to them. Yes, he is a special manager in the general scheme of things, but in comparison to Thomas Tuchel, he's not a wildly better manager. So I just wonder if the overthinking thing is actually feeding into the idea of Pep Guardiola being the greatest manager of all time a little bit too much, that actually he looked at this matchup and he just got it wrong. He just made a bad decision.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to watch his obsession with this tournament grow and grow and grow as he gets closer and closer. The photograph of him walking past the trophy the other night, I thought was like, this is interesting. What is actually going through his head right now as he walks past that trophy? 'Cause when Graham was talking there about he wanted the team to be so attacking and to thrash the opposition, that never happens in Champions League finals, where a team absolutely annihilates the other team, except very rarely. And the only time that I could think of where it was a complete mullering was the '94 final, where Milan won it, right? And I don't know if you remember the goals, but Desai scores. There's a beautiful left foot chip from Dejan Savicevic, and I was like, who was that against, right? Who did they beat? And so I Googled it. They beat Barcelona in that final in '94. And Pep Guardiola is centre back. Sorry, he's actually at the tip of the bottom of the diamond, right? But is he actually did himself and Nadal and Koeman, where they was it an ultra defensive formation that Cruyff played that night, and just reading about it here as well. Most of the attacking flair that Milan thought they would have access to, they couldn't play because of the European rules at that stage, and it ends up being a really attacking team by Milan standards and by Capello standards at the time. So, but like that whole, I want one of those signature performances, because that is like certainly in European football history. Is it the last one before the Champions League?
No, Champions League is it? I think Champions League is a bit earlier.
Okay.
Marseille were had, because that's Champions League after that, so that's would have won it. But are we not forgetting Pep Guardiola? His team's own performance against Manchester United, like, is that?
Is it 3-1? Is it or the 2-0?
The 3-1.
Yeah, but it's not 4-0. It's not like it probably is signature. In fairness, it is the crowning. It's another coronation of the team.
And also the Real Madrid against Juventus one. I know Mandzukic scores that incredible goal early on. That felt like a really signature moment. Juventus Real Madrid, sorry. I'm getting confused here because of Ronaldo going to Juventus. That one felt like a bit of a crowning glory on Ronaldo's career, and that was a little bit more one-sided than maybe people recall as well.
It's actually 4-1, you're right, it's 4-1. It's just that team wasn't a great team in those,
Yeah, that's fair.
And I just think what he's trying to do, and I don't know if any of that's in your head when you're thinking, I'm not going to pick this defensive central midfielder against this other team. Like, it didn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense in retrospect. It didn't seem to make that much sense at the time. Like, when you see Sterling, who he hasn't trusted all year in the team, and suddenly he's trusting him at the last moment.
Yeah, and it is interesting. After 10 minutes, you're like, ooh, has he got the Sterling decision right? But as it turned out, it's very hard to paint a picture that he did get that decision correct. Like, I do think, okay, so Sterling's form was poor leading up to the Champions League final. It was probably a bad decision. It just would have been interesting to see what would have happened had Sterling not played, and like how does your front three then look, where it's like you still have Foden on the pitch, you still have Bernardo Silva on the pitch, you still have Mahrez on the pitch. Like, it all kind of rounds itself back to the holding midfielder position, which just pushes Gundogan up, and all of a sudden it's Gundogan and De Bruyne. Like, that is the root of all the issues there. And then you push another player into the front three, and all of a sudden Sterling doesn't start. So it's not necessarily, who's the attacker that would have done a better job. I think their best attackers were on the pitch. It was just
too many of them.
Yeah, exactly.
OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning, start with Gillette. Give me the confidence to tackle that ahead. It's 24 minutes past 8. Plenty more for us to get through between now and 10 o'clock this morning, including Pat Nevin and the return of the GAA Power Rankings, the very first one of the season for you. Loads of comments coming through. Shifty Lad says, Scott McTominay should be a centre-back. He has all the attributes to be a great one too. Ball player, size, strength, stamina and talkative, I'm telling you.
Interesting. I mean, what would happen if you played Harry Maguire, Scott McTominay and Aaron Wan-Bissaka as a back three for Manchester United?
Do you know what? Like, I'd like to see that. I would like to see that. Like, I don't think Scott McTominay's going to make it as a world-class central midfielder. He might be okay for 25 games a season, but he's not going to be somebody who plays. You chalk him in there, it seems like, and maybe the next couple of years there's going to be a huge explosion in his attributes that will allow him to go on and become that player, and that statement will complete bunkum, because players do obviously get better, and particularly at that age that they're at the moment. But maybe he's a centre-back. And like, listen to Graham talk about the England team. Isn't there a way that you could actually just have one recognised centre-back and then play a bunch of other players around? Like, England are going to have the ball a lot, right? And if you've got Henderson or Declan Rice in midfield, do you really need an out-and-out second centre-back for most of those games? Unless you're playing a team with two out-and-out centre-forwards, which hardly ever happens these days, couldn't you find a way to have Reece James play alongside Harry Maguire and have Trippier on the right, and like maybe Trent is in the team in midfield if you've got two other central midfielders like Rice and Henderson in that team?
Yeah, it's good. Like, it does feel a little bit lopsided that you're going to have Stones or Maguire on the left of a back three. Like, so you're going to have Luke Shaw as your left wing back.
Stop playing a back three then. Like, play the midfielders. Play Declan Rice there, and just you're a midfielder all the time, except when we don't have the ball, which is 25% of the time most of these games. And a lot of the time we're not going to have it. You'll know that you're a centre back for all the set pieces.
So what that would do is it would allow you to play a midfield of Henderson, Rice and
Trent?
Who am I forgetting? Who's the... Oh my God. I literally...
Mason Mount.
Mason Mount, Henderson and Rice. Then you could play that midfield three rather than picking two out of that. The problem is, though, then you're playing a back four and...
But it's not really a back four, because Declan Rice is a defender when you're out of possession, and Henderson's a defender when you're out of possession.
But the knock-on impact on the squad then is you're only playing one of Walker, Trippier or Alexander-Arnold / Reece James.
Well, unless you play Alexander-Arnold in midfield. Who's your centre-back? Who's your second centre-back?
Well, then it'll be Maguire and Stones.
No, get Stones out.
Oh, sorry. So
Reece James there.
Yeah, Reece James. I'm not. When you're playing a back four, I think
you can't do it now because they haven't tried it.
Yeah.
But maybe you can. I don't know. Great teams have often been born in the midst of the heat of a tournament.
Like, I mean, if we're kind of like having these conversations before a squad is made up, like, you can kind of see why an England manager can often go into like a state of psychosis before a tournament.
How do you fix
like, wow, look at all this money. How do I spend it?
Yeah, they need to get somebody who doesn't care. Like, now's the time to get Alex Ferguson in and go, I don't really care if you win or lose, but this is the team, lads. Off you go. Go on.
Yeah.
OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Give me the confidence attack that I had. 28 minutes past 8. We'll take a quick break. Back after these.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
The Football Pod with Paddy and Andy, our new weekly Gaelic football show with Paddy Andrews and Andy Moran.
Lads, it's official, right? No GAA player was practicing tackling at all during lockdown. They were practicing that dummy bounce.
Defenders got complacent. They didn't have to mark anymore. If you were playing on the full back line, you didn't have to get touch tight. You didn't have to dog a fella because you three your mates standing 10 yards away from you.
Download the OTB Sports app and subscribe to the GAA podcast feed now.
At Online Tradesmen, we've never been busier. And if you're a trade professional, there's never been a better time to join us. Access over €17 million worth of jobs nationwide every month, along with e-learning and other supports. Need a website for your business? It's included in your membership. And on average, Online Tradesmen members get up to 10 times their fee back in new sales, marketing tools and savings. Apply today at onlinetradesmen.ie. Online Tradesmen, the home of qualified trade professionals.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Right, it is 29 minutes past 8 this morning. If you want to get in touch with us, we'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. And as I said, we have a pretty busy show for you coming as well. Let's do a quick run through the sports pages. We can start with otbsports.com. Pat Nevin dishes the gossip on the Chelsea Champions League party. Got to celebrate, obviously, as a Chelsea legend. And Tunisia goes all out to welcome Manchester United starlet Hannibal. Roddy Doyle, Why I Love Football, Chelsea and N'Golo Kante. Who doesn't love N'Golo Kante at this point? I mean, perhaps if you're Manchester City you don't, but you'll get over that. Naomi Osaka withdraws from this year's French Open, and Niamh Briggs identifies the weak link in Munster's defence. The Munster fans aren't very happy at the moment about how this nondescript, non-important Rainbow Cup has gone for them. So I don't know, there could be more fallout from this than we had previously anticipated about what was essentially an end-of-season tournament. 8:30 here on OTB AM, the back page of The Guardian. French disconnect. Osaka pulls out after criticism and reveals bouts of depression. And there is a picture of Trent and Gareth Southgate, and big speculation about who will be dropped from the England squad. We'll obviously keep you up to date on that on otbsports.com as part of our countdown to the Euros, which is only 10 days away. The first game is on the 11th. Today's the 1st of June. So I'm actually looking forward to the Euros. I'm looking forward to all the football being on again.
I'm absolutely buzzing, yeah.
There's going to be fans at the games, and it's international football, and it's little small groups. And I know the bloated tournament, it all means far less, but like it means there's loads of tournaments, loads of matches.
Yeah, but it also means that the crappy last match day of the group stage has newfound significance. Like if you go back to Euro 2016, Ireland against Italy, that game, would that have been a dead rubber for Ireland? It would have been an outside shot for them to qualify as a third place team. Instead, they can go for it, get the win. Robbie Brady scores the goal. They finish third, they qualify. It's this amazing moment. So there's more of that, and I think the bloated tournament isn't great in one level, but
I mean, I'm kind of in favour of the bloated tournament. What can I say?
It has its benefits.
Yeah, a bit of bloating never did anybody any harm. We can always purge afterwards. The Irish Independent back page. Lion-hearted Sexton set to make return for Leinster. It's good news for him. Probably good news for the Lions if there's an injury as well. And then Bohemian sign up Dublin star McMahon as their own Mr. Motivator. This was an exclusive on otbsports.com yesterday. From Stephen Doyle had this first person with it, that he's just eagle-eyed after the game going, hang on a second, that looks a bit like Philly McMahon, and indeed it was, and both confirmed yesterday that he is involved in the backroom team, part of the coaching staff, working on the motivational side of things, so on the first team performance coach, which is great to see. Philly obviously has his own business, several of his own businesses actually, but the gym is the one I think that most people will be familiar with. bdo7.ie is the gym. Right, the other one here, record-breaking Tubridy in league of his own. This is Michael Burney's story. We wanted to talk a little bit about this. Football League's all-time top scorers. Matty Ford, number 5. Number 4, Tony McTague of Offaly. Number 3, Ronan Carolyn of Cavan. Number 2, Mickey Cairns of Sligo. And number 1, David Tubridy, and it's not even close anymore. He is out in front by 9 points. He has scored 22 goals and 412 points in his league career, which is absolutely sensational. 478 points he has scored. Now, I don't know how far the records go back, but wasn't Miko's record in the league something ridiculous at one point?
It was. If you open up the newspaper, actually, they've put Miko, I think he's in the top 10. So there is actually that historical context. And
wasn't there something about Miko missing about 5 years in the middle of it as well? Like, wasn't there something?
Yeah, he got injured in the middle of his career, didn't he?
Broke a leg, and it was like back in the day when breaking your leg was essentially they chopped it off to fix it. So number 10 is Dermot Earley from Roscommon. Was he not a midfielder as well? Was that not like so? 17 goals, 316 points, Dermot Earley. 9, Mick O'Dwyer. 8, Brian Stafford. 13, 334. Stevie McDonnell. 33, 282, 33 goals. Nobody else. Matty Ford scored 29, but nobody else is kind of anywhere close to Stevie McDonnell, the goal poacher. Conor McManus still active at number 6, but not sure he's closing the gap on David Tubridy at any time soon because he's 90 points behind him. But again, I mean, Conor McManus could probably notch up 90 points. Give him 10 more games, right? But Tubridy just needs to keep going, keep adding to his record. So Conor McManus is 6, and then Matty Ford, as I said, the rest. But this is a big deal, isn't it?
It is. I really hope that all these games that are being streamed on GAA Go and on other platforms are being kept and are being held in a vault for future generations, and that they're not being deleted by anyone, because we have missed out on appreciating players like David Tubridy for so long. I'm not sure where Michael Burney went to get his statistics. They're certainly not readily available online. I'm sure the journalism had to go in to get them. Maybe they are, maybe I'm wrong. But by and large, when it comes to GAA statistics, they're hard to find. It is very, very hard to actually have any solid idea of who is even a top scorer, let alone a back who conceded the fewest off their man, or a team who conceded the least. When it comes to the nitty-gritty of more minute statistics, they just don't exist. But we do have scorers in certain places, and we should be cherishing these records as much as possible. These sort of incredible performances by David Tubridy down through the divisions that we've got no idea about, by and large. Clare football fans will know all about them, no doubt, following him in every corner of the country. But we're only really getting up to speed on David Tubridy as a National League legend this season, because he's in Division 2, and I think there is kind of this...
Because the game's on telly at the weekend.
The game's on telly at the weekend, and we're starting to realise that Division 2 is actually the best football competition there is.
Sorry, I just do want to point out that your as in you specifically, your arrogance as a Kerry fan has shone through here, because the rest of the country has been beaten at some point by David Clifford in a league match, and David Tubridy in a league match, and we've all known about him. Certainly, Kildare have had their struggles with Clare over the last couple of years, so we've seen this in action. Eoin, you guys in your Division 1, your ivory tower, your Super League of elitism, who never deign to look down on the little people, are completely blissfully unaware that there are actually about 26 other counties around the place who you have to be cognizant of and sometimes play matches against.
That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that we actually haven't been able to watch David Tubridy. We all knew about David Tubridy, and like you read the match report and he's like, oh, 125 for D Tubridy in the tiny print of the 400-word match report. Everybody knew about David Tubridy. Yes, we've seen him playing Championship. Yes, he pops up twice in a 4-minute highlight reel in the middle of July when Clare are playing a second round qualifier match. But the sort of full broadcast of these league games involving teams like Clare are just fantastic. I wish we had them in the past. I wish we could go back and watch Dermot Earley scoring his ridiculous array of goals from midfield for Roscommon, like you can go back and watch the 1976 European Championships final on YouTube. I wish we had that sort of level of access within the GAA archive. It all exists when it comes to the big championship games, but when it comes to these league games that threw up ridiculous encounters between players and ridiculous scorelines from certain legends of the game, I wish we could go back at will and just watch them. But thankfully, we're starting to get there now when it comes to the likes of David Tubridy and being able to appreciate what he is, because, Jesus, he's a phenomenal footballer. Kicked 2 amazing points from play at the weekend. That is a brilliant Clare forward line. Yeah, and we need more of these records. Like every second week when you're watching American sports, it's like a new streak is broken and a little bit of hype around that, and then a little bit of history excavating who those previous people were, and people layer on the context of why what we're watching is actually building on the shoulders of giants and also fairly sensational. And we just need to inject a little bit more of that into all forms of Irish sport, but particularly GAA. Yeah, because it's so important. Everybody loves this sort of stuff. Like it's almost an achievement when you go on, when somebody tweets a statistic from a Gaelic Games match, because chances are that tweeter will have gone to so much work to actually dig down to find the relevant information. We're extremely lucky that Wishy Fogarty used to have his Terrace Talk website, which was very well compiled with all the information you could possibly need about Kerry. But it's a real shame that that website's been left dormant for the last 4 years. Unfortunately, Wishy passed away a couple of years ago, and maybe when his health declined, it wasn't being kept up to speed. But every county should have that sort of website. I'm sure there are other counties who have that level of in-depth information. There should also be a national hub. This should be something that we can quantify and settle more pub arguments with greater ease than we have done before, because we're in the modern age, and the advent of streaming last year was a brilliant moment, I felt, for Gaelic games and people's relationship with teams that aren't Kerry and Dublin and Mayo and Galway and Cork, for example. And I think that next step forward is important, especially if you're going into a B football championship next year. Not to say that David Tubridy will be playing in that. He would certainly be an A player on this year's form and in the running for Sam Maguire. But if there is going to be a Tailteann Cup next year, like, this will be an important part of it. How do you actually make these teams relevant in everyday speak, for example? I'm sure some of the games will be cracking anyway, but the heralding and the glorifying of some players that aren't from the teams that are in contention for Sam Maguire is good, and we need to be doing more of it. Okay, it is 8:39 this morning. If you want to get in touch with us, 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number, and we can take it from there. Now, I don't know if is Neil Tracy with us? No, Neil Tracy is going to be with us in a moment, so we'll do our cheat sheet for the second of the this is obviously the fourth of the group that includes England, Croatia, Scotland and And Czech Republic. So are we ready with the 90-second timer for Czech Republic? Let's go. So Czech Republic qualified for this tournament automatically, despite being awful away from home, where they lost to Bulgaria, Kosovo, and lost 5-0 away to England. At the last Euros, they crashed out in the group stages without a win, and they have not qualified for a World Cup since 2006. So it's all nostalgia now for the Czech Republic. They were finalists at Euro 96 in their first Euros post-Czechoslovakia, and semi-finalists in 2004 with that brilliant team that you can see on screen of Czech, Nedved, Rosicky, Poborski, Baroš and Koller. But the interest of the national team has recently dwindled, with the home game against England in qualification failing to sell out. But this is their 7th Euros in a row that they've qualified for, and West Ham United have given them the kick that they needed. Vladimir Soufal and Thomas Souček were two of the main stars during a brilliant season under David Moyes this year. And maybe Souček, the Czech Fellaini, didn't get as many of the Team of the Year plaudits as one Mr. Declan Rice, simply because he's not English, but who's to say? Despite being able to name 26 players in your Euros squad, Jaroslav Šilhavý has elected to name just 25 players in his squad. He has kept one space open for Ondrej Kudela, who is taking his case to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. He's the guy who was found guilty, allegedly, of racially abusing Glenn Kamara of Rangers in the Europa League. UEFA have heard an appeal, and he's taking it to the CAS after UEFA upheld the appeal. And clearly, the message from the Czech Republic is you're welcome into our squad if and when you get off the hook. So we'll get to our prediction later, but let's just say there are some teams you wouldn't mind seeing getting battered in their group stage matches. Here's the home jersey. It's crap. Here's the away jersey. Even worse. Czech Republic, there you go.
Okay, fourth of four in that group, and going to finish last. That's your prediction?
I think so. They've got a couple of good players. Obviously, we mentioned the two West Ham boys. Patrick Schick up front is a really good player with Bayer Leverkusen. Matej Vidra of Burnley's in the squad. Probably won't start, so they've got a bit of depth in that centre-forward position. And Alex Kral of Spartak Moscow, with the David Luiz hair, who you'll have seen in the team photo at the start, will play in the holding midfield role. So they'll be a ridiculously tough nut to crack for all three of those teams in the group. But I think they're going to finish fourth and go home. But as I say, if Kudela is in that squad, keep an eye out for that reception in Scotland in particular. They play Scotland in Hampden.
Okay, be interesting to see what happens with the pre-match taking the knee with them as well. 8:42 this morning, Neil Tracy is with us. Neil, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm good, guys. How are you doing?
Yeah, it's a busy morning in sport, actually.
Yeah, it certainly is. I'll get right into it. Serena Williams, among a number of tennis's top stars who are backing Naomi Osaka over her decision to withdraw from the French Open. The 23-year-old world number 2 released a statement last night confirming she pull out of the tournament. Osaka had been involved in a standoff with organisers over her failure to take part in press conferences. She says she'll now take time away from the game in order to deal with bouts of depression she's been experiencing in recent years. Venus Williams, Serena Williams, Coco Gauff, as well as a number of other high-profile sports stars, Usain Bolt, Russell Wilson, and Steph Curry and Michelle Wie have all given her support. Here's what Serena Williams had to say.
Everyone is different and everyone handles things differently. So, you just have to let her handle it the way she wants to in the best way that she thinks she can. And that's the only thing I can say. I think she's doing the best that she can.
Yeah, very strong stuff there from Serena Williams. It's clear that the rest of the world are going to come out and support Naomi Osaka, and as everybody should, when she has now very clearly said that the press conference stuff wasn't actually the main thing that was going on in her life. That was a significant bout of depression. So obviously anytime anybody is suffering from depression, you want them to get the help that they need and to get back to doing what it was that I don't know, not made them famous or happy, but if tennis made her happy, that's great. But if it didn't, if something else is Naomi Osaka's course in life, then she should go and do that and not feel under pressure just to play tennis because there were contracts or prize money or any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think it's probably important to note the fact that she referenced it's been something that she's been dealing with since winning the US Open in 2018, because obviously that was her first break into tennis stardom when she beat Serena Williams in the final where Williams had been disqualified. And there's a lot of 2 + 2 = 5 going on, but I think it's hard not to look at it and realise that would have been her first exposure to the constant press conferences, the constant scrutiny of a major tournament. Like she'd been in Grand Slams before that, but she'd been in getting to second, third rounds, things like that. This was her first involvement in a Grand Slam where she was going all the way and competing, and all the eyes were on her. And when you factor in the sexism row that enveloped after Serena Williams' disqualification, like Naomi Osaka, her biggest moment of her career was landed right in there, and she was dealing with some very, very uncomfortable and awkward questions when she was probably very, very inexperienced in the world of press conferences and dealing with the media. And I think it's hard not to look at what she's been saying over the last couple of days and think that hasn't factored into it in some way.
Yeah, it is interesting how this is, the media story is now, it was the story, because obviously that was the initial thing about not being involved in press conferences, and now obviously this is a far different story to being about press conferences, in my opinion anyway. And maybe there was a little bit of preciousness on the part of the media in the first place, was there, that this was some sort of destruction of a bastion of democracy, Naomi Osaka not wanting to do press, and that cynicism existed around what Naomi Osaka was initially saying. I think that the cynicism has naturally been eroded after the statement last night, which it absolutely has to be. There are still some idiots who will claim that she's talking nonsense, which I just can't get my head around, because if you're talking about this story, unless you are Naomi Osaka or someone very close to her, you don't know the truth about Naomi Osaka. You are essentially guessing what the truth is if you're going on Twitter and saying that this is all nonsense. So people have actually elected to not believe what she is saying, which I always find to be a very strange stance from anybody's point of view, to be quite honest with you, that this is obviously like a really tough time in her own life, and the press conferences thing was just only a little small part of it. So maybe that whole thing got blown out of proportion a couple of days ago, but I'm sure a lot of people have perhaps changed their mind after seeing that last night.
Anything else happening today?
Yeah, well, on the court, women's top seed Ashley Barty begins her quest for a second slam on the clay. She faces American Bernarda Pera, while fifth seed Alina Svitolina takes on the home favourite Ocean Babel. In the men's draw, 13-time champion Rafael Nadal is in first-round action this afternoon. The 20-time Grand Slam winner goes up against Australia's Alexei Popyrin. Meanwhile, world number one Novak Djokovic begins his campaign tonight, taking on Tennis Sandgren. In Gaelic games, a breach of COVID-19 regulations by a club in West Cork has been passed to the Director of Public Prosecutions. A team there were reported to Gardaí in Clonakilty for group training under level 5 restrictions at the time. In April, the Gardaí said they were investigating all the circumstances of this incident. Jonathan Sexton will be assessed by Leinster's coaching staff ahead of Friday's Rainbow Cup trip to Glasgow. The Ireland captain has returned to full contact training, having not played in 6 weeks. Sexton sustained the latest in a string of head injuries during Leinster's Heineken Champions Cup win against Exeter. In bad news, though, Will Connor's season is over. The flanker has undergone knee surgery. In Olympic news, one of Ireland's potential medal prospects for Tokyo 2020 is withdrawn from Olympic consideration. Middleweight Michael Nevin won't be travelling with the rest of the Irish squad to this week's Olympic qualifier in Paris. He was a bronze medalist at the 2019 European Championships, and it's reported he's considering turning professional. And finally, there's an 8-race card in Tipperary this evening, where the first goes to Posture at 20-5.
Neil, good stuff. Thanks very much for that. Neil Tracy with you all day, right across all of our radio stations, and of course you can read his stuff on otbsports.com. It's 8:48, OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Eoin has sat down studiously over the last week, and on the back of a fag packet written out who he thinks are the best Gaelic football teams in the country, ranking them all the way from 32 down to 1. We don't even give Kilkenny the cursory 33rd ranking. They'd be 34 technically, because New York would beat them. Is that right?
Correct. Actually, right, we should start doing that. We should start putting teams
in New York, even though they aren't there.
Because there's certain teams who can't take part due to COVID, and then there is one team who just can't be bothered to take part.
Where's this? Sure. They could be in it too, right?
Yeah, they're more of a hurling stronghold, right?
I think so. Right, we're delighted to welcome Toyota Ambassador and Paralympian Nicole Turner to the show. Toyota is an official partner to Paralympics Ireland and worldwide mobility partner to the Olympic and Paralympic Games. And with just under 100 days to go to the Paralympic Games, Toyota's Start Your Impossible campaign celebrates the very best of human performance and can be checked out on toyota.ie. Now, Nicole, good morning to you. How are you getting on?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, pretty good. You've had a fairly sensational couple of weeks at the European Championships.
I have, to be honest. It's just, well, for me, Europeans was the first time since 2019 that I actually stood up on a block against my international competitors. So to even get to Europeans and get a bit of competing was an absolute bonus for me. But then to come home with a few medals, that was the icing on the cake.
So that must have been unbelievably exciting to get to that stage. What was it like on the blocks the first time? Like the fear of a false start, I presume, is pretty overwhelming. But how do you manage the excitement and the joy, and then also, this is actually serious competition as well?
Oh, absolutely, there was. And especially for me, Europeans, thankfully, because I've already qualified for Tokyo, the pressure's off me now, so I'm not chasing times down, and the big focus is on Tokyo. So Europeans was just literally about getting the feel of being back racing again internationally against other nations. So I think the nerves didn't really get to me until my main event, but like the first few days of the week, I just really enjoyed myself. I couldn't wait to stand up each time and get a bit of racing under my belt.
Where were the Europeans on?
They were in Madeira, so they were in an island off Portugal.
And that whole kind of travel, like what has your lockdown been like as an elite athlete? You've kind of been allowed to do a bit more than most people, but was that just the first time that you'd actually been out of the country and all that whole time as well?
It's the second. So in lockdown, the very first lockdown, we stopped swimming. When Tokyo got called off, we were out of the water for 2.5 months. That's the longest we've ever been out of the water. But then as things started getting back to normal, we were having like competitions in the NAC for like Olympic and Paralympic athletes. But then things got a bit better, and then we went on a training camp to Fuerteventura at the end of March this year, and that was the very first time we'd been out of the country since September 2019. And then we came home for 4 weeks, and then we travelled it to Europeans.
What's swimming like after a 2.5-month break?
It's not very nice. I say that though, because see, we did have 2.5 months break, but most of us switched up our sports. So most of us actually switched up cycling for swimming. So we were still doing, and I'm fortunate enough that I could still do my gym sessions at home. So we were still doing that bit to tick us over. And then when we did enter the water again, it was a nice surprise that it was nothing like we'd expected, but still we had lost a good bit. So, but it was like, I'm the type of person that I love swimming, don't get me wrong, but like some days I'll be like, I'd love a day off. Whereas when it was taken away from me, I just couldn't wait to get back into it.
So has there been like a newfound passion almost for the sport since you've come back?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It did show me the love I have for it, definitely.
You're from Portarlington, is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
So it's actually not too bad to get up and down to the National Aquatic Centre on the sports campus. I say that obviously, but it's also not that close.
Oh, no, well, I mean, Toyota make it that bit easier and give me a free car. But no, it's not. And thankfully, I've said this before, my mum doesn't work. My mum's a full-time housewife, and she takes me swimming, up and down to swimming every day. So it's about, like, thankfully now that we're still in a bit of lockdown, there's not that much traffic on the road, so we'd get there in under an hour. And then on a bad day, it'd be like an hour and 10, but it doesn't bother me at all, to be honest.
So your mum obviously is very committed to your swimming career as well, because as far as I know, she wouldn't have been even allowed in to watch the sessions at various stages.
No, she's still not actually. So the pool is still closed, and it's closed to everyone except swimmers and coaches. So my mom, thankfully with the campus, my mom, she walks around the campus for half the time and then she'd chill in the car. But yeah, she does have a lot of patience for me and sits in the car while I train for 2.5 hours every day.
It must be pretty sweet to have that support network and to know that when you're in the pool, you're representing your family and you're representing Portarlington and therefore Laois, and then as you go to the Europeans, you're representing the whole country as well. What's that feeling like? Oh,
it's a huge honour. Like, the amount of people, like, I think that's what some people might not realise when you do step up on a block or even step up on a podium. The amount of work that goes into that is something, like, nobody sees the amount of work. Like, yeah, they might think a bit of training here and there, but the amount of support staff that you have, like, as I said, my brothers are so understanding that my parents literally work around me the whole time. So it's just, everyone plays a big part in it.
And I presume that gives you a lot of confidence then as well.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, especially these Europeans, like, the Europeans for me, we have a local, like, national competition in the middle of June, but the Europeans is the final international now until Tokyo. So going in and swimming the way I swam, it did give me a huge confidence boost going into Tokyo.
The other thing that I just wanted to ask you about was obviously these Olympics were supposed to be last year and this year, but they've come in the middle of an educational cycle for you. You were due to do the leaving, I think, last year. Was that right?
So what I did was, so the way I just said, I have an hour and 10 commute every day. I moved up to the NAC in the middle of second year, and my normal school day would have ran from 9 to 4. And if I would have finished school at 4 o'clock, I wouldn't have made it up to the NAC for 5. So from second year up until the end of transition year, my school agreed that I could miss the last class of the day, so I'd finish 40 minutes earlier than everyone else. But then when at the end of transition year, when I was going into fifth year, they just said it wouldn't really be possible. And to be honest, I thought about it, even studying wise and doing swimming, it would have been full on for me even more. So that's when I decided to take a year out, unknown that it would have been 2 years out of school and focus on my swimming.
And so you're going back at the end of the Olympics next year into the Leaving Cert? Is that the plan?
I'm not sure if I'm going to go do it in the school, but I do plan on doing some sort of Leaving Cert at some point, definitely.
And with that time out, obviously, again, the focus day in, day out is on swimming. How do you make sure that your mind is continuing to grow and that you don't become too obsessed with the swimming? To get a bit of balance.
Yeah, there is a balance. And to be honest, not so much now, but I did try, like, a thing that I didn't realise when I did take the year out, I didn't realise how much time I'd see my friends. We were in school, we were doing work, but I'd see a good few people every single day. Whereas when that was taken away from me, it only actually hit me, like, God, the impact they had. So I do try and see my friends once a week. But to be honest, even at the minute, it's quite nice because we train 12 to 2 bang in the middle of the day. So I'd leave my house around 10:15 and I wouldn't be back until about 3:30, 4:45. So it does take a nice chunk of my day. It does occupy me for a nice chunk of my day. But then I do have to try and not just be a lazy bones and sit in my room all day.
I presume warm weather training in different locations around Europe helps to take the mind off the stress of swimming as well.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, even swimming in the sun, like, we went to Fuerteventura, as I said, at the end of March. And it was the training was, like, when we do go on training camps, the training does up and we do quite a lot of sessions. But to be in the sun, it made it so much better.
So, obviously, having done so well with a couple of bronze and a couple of silver at the European Championships, obviously the Olympics is another step up as well as swimmers from all around the world come into it. What's the level of competition? What's the difference between Euros and the Olympics in your head? And how competitive do you expect to be when you get to Tokyo?
To be honest, Europeans at the Paralympic Games is a lot different to a normal Europeans as well, because it's very early in the season. It's not your peak performance. And also because, especially this year, because of coronavirus, the only people went if they needed to go. So the only people, like, we sent a team because we needed qualification and we needed a thing called classification. So that's the only reason I went. But so there wasn't that many, like, even European nations, there wasn't that many swimmers there. But the games and even a world championships, it's a whole new level. Because even some people come onto the scene, as I said last year, that Chinese girl who broke the world record in the 50 fly, we knew nothing about her until she started swimming that week. So I just think you can't really take it for granted that you're definitely, like, I don't think you can take anything for granted, but you can't take for granted being like, oh yeah, I'm going to go and I'm going to win a medal. Like, you really have to have the fight and desire that you want to win the medal, and hopefully if you swim your best ever, you will.
Well, listen, we wish you the very best of luck over the next 100 days. Incredibly exciting time for you and for your family, as I said, for Port Arlington, and hopefully we'll all be cheering you on in Tokyo if and when that happens. Nicole, great to have you with us this morning. Thanks a million.
Thank you.
That's Nicole Turner there, an ambassador for Toyota, who, of course, as I said, are worldwide mobility partner to the Olympic and Paralympic Games. And you can check out Toyota's Start Your Impossible campaign at toyota.ie, which celebrates the best of human performance. Now, before we go, I'll tell you what's on OTB Sports Radio. Ronnie Delaney, OTB gold, speaking of gold medals at the Olympics at 1 o'clock today. Dadcast from 3. Stephen Elliott's career retrospective at 4. And Jerry Eisenberg, the legendary boxing writer, talking about Muhammad Ali from 6. Up next this morning, it's the 2021 edition of Eoin Sheahan's official OTB AM GAA Power Rankings. Right after these.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Have you subscribed to the OTB Football Podcast? If not, here's some of what you've missed over the last week.
Just talking about Moyes, he lost 3 of his back 4 within a week of taking the job. I bet he phoned up Fergie and said thank you very much.
You want the team to push on, and equally you don't want to hear they've signed 8 new strikers.
I've warned them off, so that's all they're allowed
that's
now
plenty.
until next year, yeah.
I tell you, if I was in management, I wouldn't go to Spurs now, Nathan. No way. I think Brandon Rodgers would be mad to go to Spurs.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts, and download the OTB Sports app.
Invisible Threads, a Go Loud original.
As we celebrate the 6th anniversary of marriage equality, Invisible Threads meets older members of the LGBTQ community who reflect on their journeys and tell their stories. From shame and isolation to conversion therapy, from living with fear to coming out as an older person. Join me, James O'Hagan, for this powerful 8-part series, winner of the first Go Loud Podship.
Subscribe to this podcast for free on the Go Loud app.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
This next slot is our power ranking slot, which has become known as 2 Pricks, 1 List.
DOLLOCKS. Galway fancy dance. Get the simple things wrong. A nice team. There's only one answer for that.
Where did this ferocious determination out there today come from?
The media. Every one of them wrote us off.
The article was rubbish.
You know, it's not my fault. Just haven't been playing a big game in Crook Park.
I've been a loser all my life. Today, holding standby.
It is time for the power ranking with Eoin Sheahan power ranking. How did that happen? You're a clown. Oh, that is harsh. Too harsh. I apologise. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Time has proven to be my friend when it comes to these power rankings over the last couple of years. We are back, by the way. We are back with the most perfect, the most flawless GAA power rankings that have ever existed. But I don't think the people at home need to be introduced to what they are, really. They've spoken for themselves over the last few years.
You've got the All-Ireland winner right a couple of years in a row. I mean, that's a high-end stuff. But after that, I think there's been plenty that you've got wrong, Eoin. So what's your format? Explain to people who have not seen the power rankings, who are power ranking virgins.
The power rankings is a list of the best Gaelic football teams in Ireland. That's it. The best teams. Whichever team is better than the other one goes in front of the other one. And we go from 32 right the way down to 1. And we eventually arrive at the team who's number 1 in the country. And who knows who that team might be on this, our very first power rankings of 2021.
OK, do we go through the whole thing?
Yeah, let's go through the first 8 teams anyway, which we might not spend all that much time on. At number 32, and they've been at number 32 for a while now, is London, because they haven't been playing games. At number 31 is Waterford. At number 30 is Wexford. At number 29 is Leitrim. Sligo coming in at number 28. Then Louth, Mickey Hart's Louth, in at number 27. Carlow in at 26 after a good start to 2021 for them. And at number 25 is Wicklow. They showed green shoots last year. They got a championship win. They got promoted from Division 1 or from Division 4, but have had a poor start to life in Division 3 this year. So those are the first 8 teams. That brings you up to number 25. We can bring you on to the next bunch of counties then. Longford in at number 24. We've got Antrim in at number 23. Westmeath coming up at number 22, and then Fermanagh at 21. Down are 20th. Laois are in at 19th after a poor start to 2021 by them as well. And then Limerick in at 18th. One of the big risers, I'd imagine, over the course of the winter. I haven't checked the last power rankings from last year, but I suspect Limerick would have been one of the big risers. They're in at number 18, as would Offaly. Offaly have 3 wins from 3 in Division 3 South so far this year, and they're in at number 17 this year. They also got a championship win last year, so it's not coming from nowhere this form from Offaly. So they're the two big winners so far, I think it's fair to say, in the championship or in the league campaign, Limerick and Offaly, and of course their form has been represented in these power rankings.
Okay, let's keep going. We'll get to the end and we'll come to the start, will we?
Yeah,
let's do it.
No, let's do it. Let's and then we can go backwards, because there may be a few controversial things, and there will be a member of our team who complains about this next bunch of teams, no doubt. But sure, look, let's just go through them anyway. Number 16 is Tipperary. They've had a bit of a mixed start this year after winning Munster last year. At number 15, another one of the risers, the team to watch in 2021 so far, it is Derry. It is Rory Gallagher's Derry. They are 3 from 3 in Division 3 North, and they are winning by pretty big margins, to say the least. Cavan, last year's Ulster winners, are in at 14th. They have struggled, like Tipperary, to match that form into early 2021, but who knows what the summer has in store for them.
Do you know where Cavan finished last year? Do you have any idea?
In the power rankings?
Yeah.
I think they were like 4th before the thing ended.
Okay. Because they were still going.
Yeah, our last power rankings was before the semi-finals, I think.
Right.
So we didn't do anything after they got hammered by Dublin, and Tipperary getting hammered by Mayo.
Okay, well, look, why don't we stop here? Tommy Rooney, good afternoon to you. Good morning to you.
Hi, chaps.
Roscommon 9, Cork 10, Meath 11, Clare 12, Kildare 13, Cavan 14, Derry 15, Tip 16.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, it's like, can you go through the reasons why, Eoin, again? How do you define it? Like, what's the science?
If one team is better than the other.
There's nothing to do with, where they stand in the league, how they get on the championship. What to do with, though?
It's all those factors come into play together. If good performances, if you show that you're a good team and they are exemplified in your league standings and they're exemplified in your championship standings, then yes, away we go. But as we know, you cannot compare like for like two teams' form lines. It's just an impossibility, whether it comes from the geographical nature of GAA, which, let's not forget, has been hammered home this year in the National League. Now more than ever, the power rankings have gained added importance. So give me your exact gripe here, Tommy.
Kildare beat Cork. Pretty.
Do you know, like, what are Cork? The reason Cork are above Meath is, and I'm not just saying it because of Meath, but the reason Cork are where they are is because they bet Kerry.
Last year in the championship match, it's true. Do you know what? I think that the ghost of last year's championship haunts us. I wouldn't be terribly surprised. We haven't seen it yet. We're not going to go just yet. But I wouldn't be terribly surprised if Eoin had Kerry 8th in these rankings on the basis of what we're seeing here so far. I would be.
I'm looking forward to seeing it.
I am too.
Wait, hold on a minute. So what's your argument for putting Meath ahead of Cork then, Tommy?
Okay, my argument isn't necessarily to put Meath ahead of Cork. I would argue that Meath are marginally better than where they are. My argument is that Cork are too high in terms of, you like to have Cork up there because it suits Kerry to have Cork up to where they are. What I don't understand is how you could have somebody like Cavan 4th last year and 14th now this year.
Well, they've been pretty grim. I support this. Cavan overrated on the basis of a couple of big games last year.
Tommy,
what have you done for
too reactive. How did they get into 4th then last year?
That was completely reactive, Tommy. We said that at the end of last year. That was like, we have to bow down to the ridiculous nature of what that championship was last year. Let's give them their moment in the sun. And I mean, they may not have an All-Ireland medal, but they certainly have a top 5 power ranking slot from last year. So
what have Cork done to get into number 10th?
I support the position of Cavan. Cork are far too high. Meath are a Division 1 team, and even the worst Division 1 team, well, we'll see.
We'll see. It's just...
you see, this is where we get into very interesting territory. Like, it is a very tough one. I'm not going to lie, I did have Meath above Cork for a couple of minutes earlier. That may have been changed by the fact that I knew you were coming. No, I'm only joking. I was changed by the fact that I looked deeper into the evidence and I realised that Cork just edge Meath at the moment. The Kerry result is not irrelevant in this conversation, just like it isn't the be-all and end-all. Cavan winning Ulster last year is not irrelevant, just like it isn't the be-all and end-all. Some of these results are flukier than others.
I meant in my head, obviously, by the way, with Meath, and not to taunt Tommy any further, but go on.
So, some of these results are flukier than others. Some of them indicate a proper uptick in form. I believed that the Cork semi-final last year indicated an uptick in form, and that's why I had them inside the top 5 or 6 last year, and then they lost the Munster final, which proved that they aren't in the top page of our power rankings here, hence why they're not even in the top 8. So, Tommy, I could have gone a lot bigger with Cork this year. I think any team that...
How? What did they do to justify going bigger on?
Tommy,
they lost the Munster final last year.
Tommy, hold on.
Kerry bottled it in the Munster semi-final. Clifford was taking shots from ridiculous angles. David Moran dropped too short into the keeper's hands in extra time. Mark Keane nudges Tommy Welsh and scores a last-minute goal. And you have them in 10th position.
Tommy, they're pushing. They were pushing for promotion to Division 1. Is that not enough justification to have a team in and around 10th spot, no?
Are they in the Division 2 semi-finals?
If they were playing in Meath's position, they're
in a relegation playoff. They're closer to Division 3 than they are to Division 1.
If they were in Meath's position, they'd be going in a promotion playoff. It's as simple as that. Meath have absolutely fluked out by being in the division that they are. Meath are the luckiest,
That's not necessarily true.
Meath are the luckiest county to have got the draw that they got. Mayo being the only difficult team they got. If Meath were in with Clare and with Kildare, chances are they'd be sitting in the exact same position as Cork. We know that the way that the leagues have been divvied up has been completely unfair on some teams. Cork are not a relegation candidate from Division 2. And if they are, maybe they're the 15, 16th best team in the country. Is that what you're saying?
I'd have Cork around 13, 14, yeah. And what I would do was I would give Cavan's provincial championship success a bit more weight if you're going on last year's championship rather than Cork's fluke in the semi-final against Kerry. I would just give a bit more weight to Cavan's success. That's what I would do. Yes, Cavan haven't been great this year. I do not think Cavan are contenders. I think that you're right to have Derry up in 15th. I'm not sure where you had them last year. They're in good form. But like if Cavan had pulled out a win against Derry at the weekend, Cavan could have been in with a shout going back to Division 2.
Yeah.
It's a very quick season, lads.
I haven't been paying enough attention.
There's 4 spots. Sorry, Joe, but there's 4 spots between them, Tommy. We're not talking like this massive gap.
They're in a tier, essentially.
Yeah, like 100%. That's exactly it.
So Cork.
But you're acting your own.
Derry is a tier. Are Derry in that tier, or are Derry a little bit behind them?
I would say that tier starts at Derry. I would say Tipperary at 16th is where the tier below that ends, and then you take a step up to Derry. I believe. I believe that there is a hard case to be made. A Tip are in a better place than Derry at this moment, despite winning Munster last year. So yes, I think you take a step up once you get to Derry, Cavan, Kildare, Clare, Meath and Cork. And they're at a I would not be surprised if people had Cork at 15th or had Derry at 10th. Well, Derry at 10th is a bit of a stretch. But they are tight calls, Tommy, you have to say. And you have to say that Cork at 10th is not a reach for them. Like, I accept that you can look back at last year and say, Cork were top 5, I think I put them in at one point. That's fair enough. I'll accept that. You know, we all get carried away. This is an emotional thing, even though it's the most correct and flawless power rankings of all time. But I think 10 for Cork, actually, they won't get promoted, but I think in 2 weeks' time, say, for example, if Meath beat Kildare, do we then look back and say, oh, Kildare are still definitely a better team than Cork, even though, you know, they beat them a couple of weeks ago? Or how do these things actually fall once we see a bit of championship football, once we see these teams at the end of the season? I just think that there is an argument to be made here that you can put a lot of teams in front of the other, and I think Cork have the best squad, they have the best team, and I think if it's I think time will be kind to this pick of Cork being a top 10 team.
Cork finished bottom of their group in the 2019 All-Ireland Championship in the Super 8s. They had a win against Limerick. They got hockeyed by Kerry, hockeyed by Dublin.
In 2019?
Beaten by Tyrone, yeah. Like, if you're talking about form, that was the last real championship we had.
So you're just taking away their win against Kerry last year?
Well, it was a bit of a...
But I'm not... We're saying the win against Kerry was a red herring.
You can't
say... It was a red herring.
You can't. Hold on a minute. Like, there's a lot of people out there who've given out about some of the stuff that I've said about Cork. Cork people at home must be up in arms about what Tommy Rooney just said there. He said the last meaningful championship evidence he has to use is 2019. He is completely writing off what you did against Kerry last year. Can you believe your eyes, Cork?
Well, I am. Sorry. Look what happened in the Munster final.
Munster final completely eradicated. Semi-final.
Don't get me wrong. I'm accepting that. If they'd won that Munster final last year, they might even be in a higher position.
Yes, they would.
10th is not a good reflection of where Cork could be at. I think they've got a playing group that is inside the top 8. I think it's a Division 1 playing group, and I think they'll prove that over the next few years.
We'll see. I think, look, we should. I hope there's going to be some more stuff to talk about, but I think that Cork should be behind at the moment. Kildare,
before we go further,
Meath and Clare. Really, I know they beat Clare at the weekend, but like. That was partly to do with Clare miscalculating on the field, it seems like.
Just before we go any further.
Yeah.
People care about these power rankings.
I care deeply about it. It's the most important thing in my life, Tommy. It's all I've got.
If you look back at the YouTube comments last year in last October, you took a lot of abuse from Cavan people.
I love Cavan people.
They were very unhappy with where you had them, and suddenly they appeared in 4th position after winning the Ulster.
They beat Donegal, who we thought were going to beat Dublin.
I am just wondering whether your own Kerry brethren have been very upset with where you've had Cork in recent years, and it just suits the narrative to have Cork that little bit higher. That's all I'm saying. I think Cork should be a powerhouse in Gaelic football. It'll be an amazing day when they're back at it, but they are not there yet.
Like, Tommy, in fairness, if you want to get into comparing what teams did in 2019, like, you don't have to look too far for an opponent that Cork came up against in 2019 and actually gave a rattle. I'm talking about Dublin here. You go through all those teams in 10 to 16 that have come up against Dublin down through the years. There isn't many of them, but Meath are one of them. Kildare are another one of those counties that have failed miserably to lay a glove on Dublin. Cork got one chance at them a couple of years ago and actually caused them a bit of trouble. Like, again, we're not talking about any world beaters here. We're talking about a team in 10th. And, like, yes, there will be people who say Meath are ahead of Cork, and yes, I flirted with that idea myself. It is close, Tommy, and I knew this was going to be the thing that would really upset you this week. But I just think, in my heart of hearts, you look at the strength of the South Division, the strength of the North Division in Division 2 this year, the fact that it is the first few games of the year. We've only got 3 regulation games to go on. We can't just make our decision based on the standings and the win-loss ratio. There's a little bit more to it. And to my eye, Cork are just about, it's a close one, but just about a better team than Meath.
And what about Limerick? 18th. What are they doing to be ahead of Antrim?
Yeah, I thought this was going to...
You know, like, this is the Munster. This is the Munster, skewing Munster again.
What do you mean? What are they doing? I thought you meant they're too far down. Limerick have been brilliant this year.
So tell us what...
They've been very good, Owen. Like, Billy Lee's done an amazing job. But
Limerick, since the start of 2020, like, this, I thought that everybody knew this. It's great that I get an opportunity to talk about what Limerick are doing. Top in Division 4 last year. People are like, OK, Division 4, who cares? Go into the Championship. They should have beaten Tipperary in the Championship last year. We'll remember Conor Sweeney's incredible point off the sideline to knock Limerick out of the Munster Championship. That could have been Limerick in that Munster final. Instead, it was Tip, and they won the Munster final. This year, then, they beat Tip in the league. Now, in fairness, they lost to Offaly, but a good Offaly side who just about pipped them in this power rankings. And they beat Wicklow by 10 points. Limerick are trending in the right direction, and I think being inside the top 20 is where they deserve to be.
Who have they got in the first round of Munster? They got Cork? No.
I only worry about the present and what we've already seen. It's Kerry Clare on one side, so they'd be on the other side.
Okay. You can settle your petty disputes about the position of Meath and Cork either on TikTok or you can do it on air next week. So this is the final sheet from 8 to 1. Where are we going?
Yeah, number 9 is Roscommon, by the way. They've got left out. Number 8 is Monaghan. Number 7 are your boys Armagh, Tommy. Number 6 are Galway. And this is why we didn't do a power rankings too early. We let the dust settle a little bit to see where a team like Galway actually really are and putting them at 6. Number 5 is Tyrone. Number 4 is Donegal. Number 3 is last year's All-Ireland runners-ups. Runner-ups. Mayo at number 3.
Runners-up.
Number 2 is Kerry. And number 1 is Dublin. I don't think Dublin have ever not been at number 1 of these power rankings. Even though I think you made a case last year, Jared, that Kerry should have been there, and the year before you made a case that Mayo should have knocked them off top spot. We've avoided. We've stayed stubborn on Dublin and.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so Monaghan 8, Armagh 7, Galway 6, Tyrone 5, Donegal 4, Mayo 3, Kerry 2, Dublin 1. So Mayo are in Division 2 and they're having the crack, getting the winning mentality back, blooding some youngsters. Andy Moran seemed pretty positive about the performance when he was talking with Tommy after that on Sunday. Are you sure they're really 3 at the moment? And we can pick holes in a lot of these at the moment.
Yeah, I'm not sure is the completely honest answer with you. I think I'll be hands up here and say Mayo have been insulated from being moved too far down this power rankings because they're playing in Division 2. What I will say is they ended last year at number 2 in the power rankings, so that is a bit of movement here. They have been pushed down one, and I now make Kerry a better contender for the All-Ireland than Mayo as a result of them playing Division 2 football. But you can't punish a team too much for playing in Division 2. And Tommy, as you've seen, playing good football in Division 2.
Yeah, I think this is very fair, Owen. It's very hard to get a read on where Mayo are at. They obviously had that brilliant win against Down. As you said, Jerry, they're blooding some young lads. I was very impressed with the difference that both teams made 10 changes yesterday going into the game. So it's very hard to get a read on where Mayo and Meath are at after that match. I think at half-time, Meath brought on Donald Keoghan, Pádraig Harnan and Shane McEntee. And for the first time in the match, they could compete physically with the Mayo lads.
The Meath substitutions at half-time. We're doing the power rankings, we're talking about Mayo, and we're still talking about the bloody Meath substitutions at half-time in what is ultimately going to be a meaningless league game. Go on, Tommy, go on.
As Andy Moran said, James Horn would have wanted Eoin O'Donoghue to go up against Jordan Morris, a fella who's in red-hot form, another Meath player playing well. So, like,
the official Meath power rankings brought to you by Tommy Rooney, Meath Hill. Go on.
I would say I was very impressed with Mayo yesterday. They were clinical. Killian O'Connor looks like he's in really good form. They've added another couple of young forwards. Ryan O'Donoghue's looking good. James Carr scored 2 goals. He was lethal in the second quarter. And they're big. They're athletic. Ruan and O'Connor are a lovely partnership in midfield. And they've got some of the best backs in the country, in Oisin Mullen and Paddy Durkin. Like, it's just very hard, as Owen said, to get a proper read on where they're at so far because they're playing Division 2 football.
I think that's fair.
And the quality of the games aren't that great.
Do you not need to dunt them down for this season's power rankings? Like, look, my main bone of contention here is Galway at 6. Galway are not the 6th best team in the country at the moment, are they?
There's a lot of cases to be made when you look at these for moving teams down. This goes for Mayo, this goes for Galway. But I would say who's actually making the play, and this goes to both of you, to actually be the 3rd best team in the country, first of all, and then who's making...
3rd best, I don't know, sorry. But certainly ahead of Galway, I'd have Monaghan ahead of Galway.
Would you?
Yeah. I think that
Monaghan
are playing against good teams and are in close games and are doing weird stuff. And so, therefore, I have some confidence that they're going to put in a championship performance. Now, the difficulty is, right, Galway could win 2 games and be in an All-Ireland semi-final, and suddenly your most correct, never wrong power rankings will have them at 4th, and we'll all be knowing that that's not true because half the country's best teams will be out after the first round of the Ulster Football Championship.
I think that's a little harsh. I think if Galway make an All-Ireland semi-final, they'll have beaten Roscommon, they'll have beaten Mayo. So I think they'll absolutely deserve to be a top 5 team after doing that in a knockout championship. It's not the hardest path you can get, but it's harder than what Kerry are going to have to come up against or what Dublin are going to have to come up against if you're judging it just on Division 1 teams. So I think Galway, if they get there, will absolutely be worth their weight in the top 4. But like, we need to forget that they have a win on the board here. They've beaten Roscommon, they've beaten another Division 1 team. I know, like, Dublin probably couldn't care less about the Galway game, but the players care about it. They care about getting their spot in that Dublin team. That narrow defeat means something to me. Now, the 22-point defeat to Kerry is the interesting one. Like, is that what you're using, Ger, to say they should not be in this top 6 conversation? Is it as simple as that, really? Because I kind of wrote that off a little bit.
It's not just that. It was the one last year. I mean, maybe you know, you write both of them off because it's essentially a final challenge match for them, and they seem to be treating it that way. The game against Mayo last year in the league after the lockdown period. So, I don't know. And look, they were getting a lot of praise for the amount of defenders and bodies they had back who were actually doing some defensive work as opposed to shooing the players through for scores.
Like Galway haven't won a Connacht Championship since 2018, lads. What Division 1 team gets beaten by 21 points, 22 points? Like, was Westmeath the last team to get beaten by that much about 6-7 years ago? Even Meath weren't getting beaten by that much in the league when they were losing their games in Division 1. Not to go back to Meath again. I think you're right with Mayo. Genuinely. I think you're right with Mayo. I think they're 3rd. I think the conversation is 4th and 5th. Like, who are you backing? Are you backing Donegal? Are you believing in Donegal? Yeah. Like, Donegal looks so weak sometimes if they're missing one player.
What is the injury situation with Michael Murphy's hamstring? To be honest, because he's missing these games, does that mean, so say he plays and he's fit to play, but he hasn't had this period to get up to full cruise control? Like, we all know hamstrings are a real pain for players to recover from because they linger, and there's a confidence issue then about going full out. And I don't know. I would say that takes Donegal out of the top 4 for me, and I think that the possibilities for Tyrone would push them up. And I think that Tyrone against Monaghan against Donegal, those matches that are happening at the moment where they're battering each other are really good testing ground. Like, in this season of all seasons, where you're going to get belched into a championship and that championship is going to be over in the blink of an eye, that getting battle-hardened is the most important thing that can happen. And that's why I would give those Ulster teams I would actually have Dublin, Kerry, and then the Ulster teams, and then Mayo, just on the basis of the Division 2 preparation not being good enough. Like when Andy Moran was talking about, the extra time in the ball, I found towards the end of my career I was getting blocked down. It's the speed of thought that the Division 1 teams have that separates them from the rest of them, and it's hard for teams from Division 2 to get up to that speed in Championship.
Yeah,
it's very difficult.
Yeah, no, that's true. And I think when you kind of look through these, I'm not sure you go along with this, Tommy, but I think maybe this is looking at the league table a little bit too much, but I think you can make a little bit of a separation between Donegal and Tyrone and Armagh and Monaghan at this point. There's a hierarchy in Ulster, it seems, that those two are definitely the best two. But at the same time, there's just, I don't know, were they just one win away from kicking Mayo out of third? I'm not sure what would have happened, but it just felt that they were both Donegal and Tyrone, that is, just missing something. As I say, maybe one more win and they were into third position and Mayo are knocked down a rung. Maybe just a lack of perfection throughout these games a little bit. Like Kerry and Dublin here are 2 wins and a draw, and maybe they're helped by being in the south. I've used that argument for Division 2, so I may as well stick by the same logic for Division 1 here. They were in a much tougher place, Tyrone and Donegal, than Kerry and Dublin were. So maybe they do deserve that reward and be above Mayo. But if I really had to bet on one team, whether it's Mayo, Tyrone or Donegal, to give Dublin a closer run to their money than anybody else, it would be Mayo out of those 3. And that's why they're clinging on to third spot.
At the moment, though, and I'm with you on that. With Donegal, I'm struggling to put Tyrone, even though I like Tyrone, I like what's happening up there. I think if Matt Shane's back, there's an added X factor there for Tyrone. And
is he going to be back?
Not sure
what do we know? What do we think? What's the latest?
I don't know, actually. I don't know if he's going to be back yet. I've tried to check it out a few times and I haven't got definitive word of when he's back. But like Dooher and Logan are just in. Bonner's been up in Donegal. He's had Rochford with him for the last 3-4 years. They let us down last year. They played Paddy McBrearty when he was undercooked. I was asking the question, were they playing him with an eye on Dublin in that game against Cavan to try and get minutes into them? They were missing a couple of defenders, Steve McMiniman and Owen Bon Gallagher. Kieran Thompson was missing against Cavan, and they really missed out on that day. I think losing Michael Murphy has allowed the likes of Michael Langan to really stand up. We've seen how good Paddy McBrearty looks. I would currently have Donegal in 4th position. And if they had delivered a bit more last year, they'd be ahead of Mayo, for me. There's not that much between them. I think Mayo, actually, I was surprised actually by how strong Mayo's depth was so far. When they've lost Donny Vaughan, David Clark, Parsons, like you name it. There's about 6 or 7 lads there in that Mayo dressing room, real leaders that have been lost.
Higgins,
But like Aidan O'Shea looked great when he came on yesterday, first game back. He's big. I heard a couple of the Mead lads saying afterwards that they felt the hits that they took off O'Shea. So like you're talking about size and power. Mayo have it, Donegal have it, but I just think Andy Moran has made the point a few times that you can't play all your beautiful players. Sometimes it has to be horses for courses. And Donegal try and play too many attacking players sometimes. That from 2 to 6, he wouldn't necessarily back them in a battle against Kerry, the Kerry forwards or Dublin forwards. So for me at the minute, I'd lean the way you're going on. I would ask you, if Roscommon had beaten Galway, would you have Roscommon in 6th place and Galway in 9th? Is it that close? Is it that final line in the power rankings?
Probably is. The only thing is Galway had, 6 points to spare over Roscommon in that game. And I do think there is a gap between those 2 teams. I don't know, to be honest. I definitely think that there was going to be a case where it was Armagh versus Galway. I think that is a very tight call at the moment, and I think I actually did have Armagh in 6th earlier on, and then I was like, nah, let's go with Galway. Galway, and maybe there's a bit of historical reference here, like thinking about pre-pandemic times, thinking about how good they were pre-pandemic. Maybe that's just a ridiculous thing to even consider. Maybe it's ridiculous to consider the game against Mayo in the Championship last year. But what I will say is this: the game against Mayo in the Championship last year gave us a reason to ignore the 22-point hammering against Kerry, because we saw last year how well they came back from a disastrous result.
I can buy that. I can definitely buy that.
That's true.
So there's one tier where it's Dublin and Kerry, and then there's a second tier where it's Mayo, Donegal, Tyrone, and then there's another tier, Galway, Armagh, Monaghan, Roscommon. Is that right?
I think that's fair.
Yeah, and I would say Roscommon and Monaghan maybe holding on to that tier with their fingertips.
Are Monaghan's attacking players not so talented, and have they not discovered a bunch of new? And is there not something? I'm constantly amazed at how well Monaghan can manufacture players.
They've such a small pick, and they have brought through a lot of young lads this year. There's Mulligan, and there's a couple of other young lads. I can't remember the corner forward's name. There's Andrew Woods. I don't think they're ready yet. Conor McCarthy, McManus, Stephen O'Hanlon's back and he's flying, are obviously there. I just think that Monaghan probably peaked 18 months ago. Probably. And I'm not sure those young lads have come true enough yet.
Yeah, okay, but I don't think they're as far behind, and I don't think they're behind Armagh, really. I know Armagh are very trendy.
I love Armagh.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, I think you might have had some influence.
Such good footballers. Oh, come on, lads. Owen's been saying the same as me for a long time now.
We did overrate
the style of play.
Big time.
Do you think we overrate them?
No, last year we did, and I just hope the same thing doesn't happen this year.
I think it feels like we're in year one of a new three-year plan for this Armagh team. And unfortunately, knockout football championships do not traditionally work very well for Geezer. So maybe this year's different again with the speed at which it happens. So how close...
Where Kildare?
What?
Where are Kildare? Sorry, I missed that earlier on. We never even mentioned Kildare.
They are 13th. Unlucky for some.
In that mishmash. So this, like Kildare, it will obviously, that'll be reevaluated if they end up getting promoted. But my point here is that it's almost the Cork-Kildare comparison is almost a more aggravating one than Cork-Meath. Like, I'm not sure, is there like also a collection of Kildare people like the Meath Hill crew who watch these power rankings and are so vociferous on social media, but they should be more fuming than Meath with these power rankings by right.
They just literally beat Cork pretty handily.
Yeah, and they've got into this promotion playoff. But the reason why I didn't give them that ticket over Cork just yet is that if they lose that game, if Meath end up beating them, then all of a sudden you're looking at Kildare and Cork both back in Division 2 next year. And who am I backing to get promoted to Division 1 next year? I'm backing Cork. I'm backing Cork over that Kildare team. And lads, you're saying that this is some sort of, Kerry want Cork in 10th. I don't think it's that. There may be a bias on my part, but it might actually just be from watching Cork more than a lot of these teams. I'll hold my hands up and say that. I've watched a lot of Cork over the last few years, and this is a bloody good team of footballers. They're coming at it off an unbelievably high base at under 20 level, as we know, over the last few years. And I think that history will be kind to that number 10 pick.
Okay, I'm not sure. I'm
not sure either.
So Dublin, Kerry, Mayo, Donegal, Tyrone, Galway, Armagh and Monaghan are the top 8. If you want to have your say, you can get us 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. Or, of course, you can leave a comment on the YouTube channel. Be kind. Hashtag be kind. Poor Eoin. He looks like he has broad shoulders, but actually...
No. Eoin, seriously, it's tough. It's a tough job trying to pick the power rankings. I just wholeheartedly disagree with that. I just think the whole Cork thing kind of skews it somewhat.
In fairness,
think you got pretty spot on outside of that. I'm not even arguing about Meath that much. I just don't think Cork should be 10th.
I expected Kerry to be number 3 or 4. Honestly, I'm proud of you, Eoin.
I couldn't get away with that.
You couldn't get away with that.
This is the first time that you've really stood up as a man and been counted.
I would have tried it.
I know the Kerry Mafia are buzzing. I can hear your phone, even though it's on silent. It's beginning to melt in your pocket with the opprobrium and the outrage about the fact that you've given Kerry the respect they deserve. So fair play to you. It's difficult going against your own people, but a prophet in his own land. That's all I'll say on that.
It's great. It's great to have it back. It's great to have it back, lads.
It is.
Could you imagine? Kildare are not a Division 1 team. They just aren't a Division 1 team yet. So Meath are going to have to back this up.
This item up, would you?
Meath are going to have to back this up.
Tommy, we've got to get on to our next item.
Well, you're wrapping the show now, Jared. That's it. We're done for this morning.
Right. Okay. Thanks very much, Tommy.
The curtain has been firmly pulled back.
Do stay tuned, because there will be something very good for you coming up immediately after the break. One of the highlights from last night's show. Stay tuned. This next slot is our power ranking slot, which is become known as
Two Pricks, One List.
DOLLOCKS. Galway fancy dance. Get the simple things wrong. A nice team. There's only one answer for that.
Where did this ferocious determination out there today come from?
The media. Every one of them wrote us off.
The article was rubbish.
You know, it's not my fault. Just haven't been Kerry in a big game in Croke Park.
I've been losing all my life. Hold and stand by.
It is time for the power ranking with Eoin Sheahan. Eoin Sheahan power ranking. How did that happen? You're a clown.
We had, you will like this. We had the great Irish author Roddy Doyle on the programme earlier. He has been a Chelsea fan for a very, very long time, and we were chewing the fat about his love of Chelsea and all that. And obviously, books are a big part of his life. happens to be reading a book by a certain Pat Nevin as we speak and is enjoying it thoroughly, and he brought that up. So Roddy Doyle is checking out your work. No pressure there, son.
Jeez, Roddy. That's a weird thing to have an author, and a fabulous author writing your stuff. I knew Roddy was a Chelsea fan. I was aware of that, but that's rather good news. But the fact he's actually quite enjoying it as well.
I know, he said thoroughly enjoying it. So you got to plug there from Roddy Doyle. So listen, hey, what about that in Porto? First of all, what was it like? I mean, I thought it looked really good on TV, the atmosphere, the whole occasion. I thought the match was very entertaining in many ways. You were doing it for 5 Live, were you?
No, I was doing it for Chelsea TV. I did a lot of work for the BBC while I was over there in Porto. But when you end up at a Champions League final, everybody wants a bet. Actually, I was on News Talk in the morning, so you do a lot of work for a variety of people. But it's just because with less journalists there than normal, less fans there than normal, you basically try to fill holes as much as possible. And it was fantastic. There was a lovely feel about the place. UEFA got in the way a wee bit, but apart from that, as UEFA tend to do. But everything else was really well organised. As you said, the stadium, I've been to Dragao 4 or 5 times now, and it is a brilliant stadium in the summer, but not in the winter, because in the winter it's got big bits at the end, and they're all open, so you get the rain and the wind comes in, but it looks beautiful. So everything was set up to be a great game. Certainly thought Man City were the favourites to win the game until I saw the lineups and thought, what? What are you doing, Pep? Now, we had this discussion, didn't we, last week, about Pep overthinking, and it's the weakness. And apparently everyone's talking about it all the time now. But he does. He overthinks it. And he did another thing. I don't know if, obviously, he watched it on TV, and I don't know how much was said on TV or how it was described, their system. But honestly, it was so hard to tell what on earth they were thinking. Zinchenko, I don't know to this day what position he was playing. I've no idea. It certainly wasn't left back, and it certainly wasn't left wing back.
Yeah,
it was somewhere just off inside left. And you're thinking, why are you doing that? Which makes it 3 left, 1 far left, 1 far right, 1 in the middle. It's like Chelsea would love you to play that way, and you've just played that way. And then, by the way, on top of that, will not play a defensive midfielder. And you're looking at it and you're going, oh my goodness. I mean, well done, Pep, for going for it and putting all those attack-minded players in, but absolutely 10 out of 10 for style, minus several million for good thinking. It really was a bad tactical day for Pep, but Chelsea played well, and just about every player on the team played well. It was a pretty, the weather was great, a lovely feeling of 14,000, which sounded great.
Yeah.
And do you know the best thing about it is you would notice that you go in and it looks full, because you've got the light blue Man City and the dark blue Chelsea fans, but the seats are blue. So it looks as if the whole place is just full. And it was a real lovely buzz to the thing. And I thought right from start, I agree with yourself, from the start of the game, there was chances, it was open, it was end to end. And the biggest shock is that, it only ended up 1-0. I suppose that's no shock for Chelsea, because that's their stock score under Thomas Tuchel. But there were so many bits of great skill in the game and interesting things in the game that were going on, some of which I couldn't quite understand. Pep kept on making these changes. And I was looking at him and thinking, I don't know what you're doing. And then at half-time, these players were walking out. If you ever get a chance to watch this, watch it again. These players were walking out for half-time. And they're all talking to each other, as if to say, do you know what's going on? Do you know where you're supposed to be? Honestly, it was a really, really weird setup. But in the end, Chelsea played incredibly well, and a lot of very, very top performances. I mean, as I've explained in this show before, N'Golo Kante lives slightly in the future. He knows exactly what everyone's going to do before they do it. It's weird. It is really weird. But I've kind of talked a lot about Havertz in the past, about how I think he could be one of these special players in world football. Yeah. You're beginning to see it a bit now. He's just so stupidly elegant, and there are lots of things that were good about him.
I hadn't realised, Roddy Doyle mentioned it earlier, that Kante's nickname is the Twins, which is great.
I know.
Really
there was a great quote many years ago. Who was the player he played with alongside the Englishman he played with at Leicester? He went to Chelsea with him. I can't remember his name now. He got that few games for him. There's people shouting at the radio now. Anyway, completely gone. I'll come back in a minute.
Oh, I'll Google him. That's annoying me. He was yet another in a long line of Scott Parker types who you thought would do well, but never got a game.
Anyway, so the story is, so them two were the two sitting midfielders, and then you had three in front of them and one up front. And people always used to say, so which side does Canty play on? Both. You know, that was the whole point. You had two, but he was actually both sides. And he was absolutely extraordinary in the game. And there's a lot of people afterwards calling for Ballon d'Ors for him. Now, if Kanté had played that way for the entire season, as opposed to most of it, I think Ballon d'Or would be a particularly acceptable concept because he is an amazing footballer.
Danny Drinkwater, by the way, of course.
That's the one. 12
appearances for Chelsea.
It didn't make much of an impact, as we said. It was the pure quality they needed was so far above his standard. But you know, he's had a great time with him and Kanté with Leicester, so you can never take that away from him. But
I'm so glad you mentioned Zinchenko. So we'll get into the Rodri Fernandinho thing and the extent to which it had a bearing on the match in a moment. But the TV offering here, and it's rarely the case, but because it was such a big game, the TV offering here gave you a tactical cam, which is just the wide version, all 22 players at all times, view of the pitch. And I thought to myself, wow, I am so on for this. This is how I'm watching the game. And I only lasted about 12 minutes. There was no commentary, which actually after a while just kind of got in on me, and you couldn't see. It was so far away. We're not quite there yet, I think, with this tactical cam. You couldn't see the minutiae of what was going on. I felt like I was missing too much of the game, so I flicked over. But one of the other things which was really bothering me, and I wanted to go over to the commentary team to see if they were explaining it, was Zinchenko. So, you know, very quickly I could see what the Chelsea shape was and where everyone was and what they were doing. And I was looking at Zinchenko in midfield, and I really felt I need someone to explain this to me. I don't know. I can see what he's doing. I can see he's standing there in midfield, but I don't know what's the purpose or what's the thinking, and I felt I was really missing the commentary to break it down for me. So now you come along, relieved to say you weren't too sure either. So that's kind of a relief. It was incredibly eye-catching where he was.
It was. It just seemed wrong. If it wouldn't have been the case, but if you were looking at it completely as just a watcher who's never seen a team before, you would think, you don't know where to play. You don't know your position.
Yeah.
You're standing in the wrong place. Now, that cannot happen at that level of football, and it didn't happen. That's not what it was. But it was that odd. And I was thinking, I really did try and think about it, because then I started going on, you get the tactical sort of heat maps and things like that when you're watching games at stadiums and UEFA games particularly. You can flick the channels and you get the average positions maps. And Chelsea's at the end of the game was as if it was just starting. It was like as if they were setting up to start the game. It was exactly the right positions, all players exactly where they should be. That was their average position. And whereas Man City's, you were looking at it and you think, no, it's just a mess. It's just a kind of weird blob with people in the wrong bits. But it was maybe, and it's just a maybe. And I thought of this at the time. Moves Zinchenko a wee bit further in, drags Havertz or whoever's playing in the right back into that midfield to cover him, because Zinchenko could go forward, which allows you to push Foden up and centre forward alongside De Bruyne. It's nonsense, but it was the only thing that was happening, right? But I was watching it, I was thinking, so I'm not hiding it. I had the Chelsea bias. I prefer Chelsea to win, although you know what yourself. I love Man City and I love what they do and I love what Pep does. But I was thinking, I'm playing against them and they're playing their best midfielder with running with the ball and see things in front of him up front with his back to the goal. And I'm thinking, why are you doing that? And it wasn't, De Bruyne wasn't coming off at all. And his intelligence can beat most people, but he's up against Thiago Silva, who's as intelligent a player in the other way.
Yeah.
And then at one point, 20, 25 minutes into it, he's shouting and bawling at Foden, going, get up there beside him. So your two strikers were Foden and Zinchenko up against centre-backs. And you're thinking, that's not what they're good at. Yeah. They're all right at it, but that's not what they are good at. Yeah. They're good at facing the other way, running that way. And you've taken them out of the play. And it was very, very odd and counterintuitive. And the most intuitive thing about it is he wants lots of attackers. He wants to make it an open game. It's this total football idea, etc. But you need a base to it, and the base was so shaky. I mean, Werner had his shooting boots on, which he maybe will one day. He could have had 2 or 3. The chances, they were so wide open. And the goal is a classic example of it. And we're not being clever after the event. I don't tweet very much, but before the game, I'm actually asking that question. I tweeted it, is this genius, or has he overthought it again? He's overthought it again. And it was really messy. And I felt quite sorry because it was 25 minutes in the game. You're thinking, it's not quite Chelsea, we've got this, but it's Chelsea, right, okay, then we're not second best here. There's every chance Chelsea can win this game. But there's times you play against City and it's not like that. And who knows, it might have been exactly the same because Chelsea played well. But I don't know. The goal was a classic, because if you look at the goal, have a little freeze frame of the goal. We'll see it a million times from here on in. But it's a massive big gap through the middle that Havertz runs into. Who's the closest player to him? Well, it's a guy that should have actually been back there marking him. It's Zinchenko, who's 40 yards away from him originally. In his wrong place. But this, I think it's because he's told to be in the wrong place. And that thing I was explaining to you about the three defenders, and one's way over there in the left back, one's way over there in the right back, and one's central. There's a massive amount of gaps. And what you're playing against, two lightning quick players like Werner and Havertz. And there's the other side of it where Chelsea had to defend really well on a couple of occasions. Sure. And Rudiger had a brilliant one tackle. There was one great tackle actually from Ben Chilwell. There was one moment where Azpilicueta had to put a ball with his left foot over the bar from 4 yards. And that was either brilliant or lucky. I don't know yet.
Well, it took a reasonable bounce for him that he could get under the touch, but it was hold your breath moment, yeah. Funny on Zinchenko for the goal, and I take your point about his wider positioning. I did feel like, speaking from memory, he was pretty much shoulder to shoulder, if not even slightly goal side of Havertz originally in that move. I thought that was just right beside him.
Yeah, should be inside him.
Inside him. Okay, yeah. But I still thought, be alive to the danger. You're not in such a ridiculously awful position that you shouldn't be able to keep pace with him and get a foot in somewhere. I just thought that was good old-fashioned bad defending on his part as opposed to Pep's fault.
Both, I would imagine, in that point in time. But you're asking him to play those two positions. You can't actually do this to them at the same time. And Havertz is intelligent. I mean, super intelligent.
Yeah.
Didn't speak brilliantly after the game. Although he did really speak brilliantly. It's exactly what we all felt. As people, as fans, if you're a fan of TV, that's the right answer. Even with the expletives. I mean, in Ireland, am I right in thinking this? I can remember doing a show with John Giles before yourselves, and John swore right at the start.
Yeah.
It was live radio.
Yeah.
Honestly, the BBC would shut down.
I know.
Whereas
we're not as bad. We're not as bad.
I know. He just went. Fair enough.
Well, John Giles can say what he wants. That's also in the Constitution. So. Like your point, like when you talk about De Bruyne there, hovering in the most crowded area of the pitch and doing nothing and never kind of even dropping deep at any stage or just asking different questions, and Foden, playing in this deeper role where you're asking your 21-year-old genius to try and do it in a position he's not as used to. And then the other thing, I mean, it was a complete systems failure, I guess, from Pep's point of view, in that he's dealing with all those problems, and there's quite a few problems there. And he's also got Reece James getting the better of Sterling in a good old-fashioned one-on-one, and you've got Chilwell getting the better of Mahrez in a good old-fashioned one-on-one. So even he didn't have those individuals to dig him out of his tactical hole that he'd managed to dig himself. So kind of everything that could go wrong did go wrong, really.
Yeah, and there was quite often we say somebody will do something brilliant.
Yeah.
But Tuchel had kind of outthought him in a few ways, really, and they kind of, the ugly stuff that Jorginho did, the ugly stuff that Mount did, the ugly stuff that Kante always did. They did it brilliantly. There was a moment, I think it was 20 minutes in or something, it was around about that, where eventually De Bruyne actually got the better of, I think it was Chilwell, and turned to go inside, and it was 20 yards out on the right-hand side. And now he's in major, perfect De Bruyne territory. And then he's tackled by Mount. But at the game, I could see where Mount had come from, and it was jaw-dropping. He spotted it from about 60 yards away.
Right.
And he had given that full pelt, I know what's going on here. And eventually when he gets by him, Mount's in there. And Mount, that was Kante-esque. So you had Jorginho doing that, you had Kante doing that, and he was doing that. Rudiger was defending like a monster. So on top of that, you're right, every Chelsea player had a really good game. One or two people said to me that Jorginho was quieter. To some degree, yeah, but he did all the ugly stuff.
Yes.
Actually, I was talking to Jorginho before the game. I had to do the flash interviews before the game. And apart from the first question, which made him laugh, he was so calm about it. He was so direct about it. He was so happy and relaxed about it. That was the thing that got me, the happiness and the relaxation about it. And I know that he gets nervy because, you know, when he came to the club, he never looks nervy on the pitch, but it meant so much to me. He was crying at the end. But he had himself in a fabulous, fabulous place. And everywhere I went round. By the way, the first question, because I'd never met him before, my first question was, can you understand Billy Gilmore? And he went, I understand. You speak slowly.
Yeah.
And then from then on, and he's just laughing and having a joke.
And do you think this is, because it can feel a bit simplistic to hone in on the Fernandinho Rodri thing and 59 of 60 games, one of them has played, etc. But do you think if Fernandinho does play and Sterling comes out and Foden moves further up the pitch and suddenly, you know, the patterns that they're all very familiar with take hold again, is it an entirely different game, or does Tuchel's plan still prove very difficult for them?
I wouldn't be surprised at 0-0.
Yeah.
And maybe even penalties.
Yeah, okay.
That's what I wouldn't be... And then you're on lottery time at that point in time. But I think it's cost them a goal. I'm not sure Chelsea playing the way they had played, they would have been broken down, because they were defending that fabulously well. And I heard another stat that after the goal, neither team got a shot on target.
Yeah.
So I'm saying 0-0 isn't that big a deal to say 0-0, because that's kind of the way it was. And it wasn't a boring 0-0 game. It's very interesting because the technical side of it was fabulous and the skill side of it was really quite special with some of the players. But they were mostly in dark blue in that game. But I think Pep would take that now. But on the other side, that's Pep. He wants to win attacking, win playing beautiful football, that stuff. He's learned a wee bit of pragmatism over the last year or two. But pragmatism went out the window for that one. And cost him.
It does illustrate, and like, this is not to have a reductive, is he a bad manager, is he a good manager, it's all black and white conversation, but it does illustrate a weakness on his part, because this is now a trend of a certain neuroticism taking hold at the really crunch moments over the last number of years. I mean, there was one for Munich against Real Madrid where he was too clever by half. He himself mentioned Leon in the press conference. It was, you know, front of his mind, where he was asked, why did you not play Fernandinho? And he said, look, it's the same with the Leon game, it's the same with this game, I do my best. So it's interesting, even he knew it in the same category. There is something there that for all the analysis he's doing of each kind of micro moment, he's not taking a step back and almost saying to himself, I have a tendency here at these moments to try and come up with something a bit clever, and actually, even though I still want to do that this time around, I'm going to resist it because it's not serving me well. And it doesn't seem like there's anybody around him who can say, Pep, you're doing that thing again.
You know, because it's not one thing. It's not one set of, I think that, then I'll think that, so I'll do C.
Yeah.
He's down to Z at this point in time. He's forgot where he is. He's gone that far. I've seen managers doing it. I've seen lots of managers doing it. And you end up, they'll pick a team and they've left their best player out. And you're thinking, what are you done that for?
Yeah.
If you started from, get them guys in there and then work a system around that. And I've watched managers do it. They've just overthought it to a point of view of, you know, they don't remember the original. And he's not a bad manager. He's a wonderful manager. He's still probably the best in many ways in a vast majority of the areas. But the other side of it, and I absolutely get this. How many cup finals has he lost? I think it might only be a couple. So when he gets there, you know, the real big ones, but it's the one before it, sometimes it's been causing him, you know, quarters or semis.
Leon was quarters, yeah.
Exactly. But this time he's done it in the final. And that's bad.
Even if there's like merit to the plan, the change is born of nervousness on his part, and his players recognise that. And so, I mean, that was what I was thinking when you were talking about Jorginho, because, I mean, you look at Chelsea, there was clarity all over that pitch. There was absolute clarity. Like, the Pep's nervousness must be contagious. Everybody must be on edge going, God, do we need to do something beyond the norm here to win this match? And actually, you don't. It's just a football match.
If you're a new manager and everything's going really, really well, you just blindly trust. Oh, he must have a bigger plan than the rest of us. If you've been under a manager for a long time and you know that there are one or two foibles, you recognise them as a group. And it kind of almost needs somebody within the group to say, look, come on, I don't think we're that confident about that. But it's a tough thing to do in the Champions League final.
Yeah.
It really is a big call, because even as a player or another coach, you're thinking, yeah, but he is the best. He's the business. He must know what he's doing. He's seen some weakness there in Chelsea or the opposition, so that would stop you doing it. But again, it's something I've watched in managers, and you bang your head against a wall and think sometimes, and I'm not saying it happened with Pep there, but sometimes the team are saying, we know better here. Actually, I've played with teams where we've basically ignored the manager and done our own thing, and it's happened more than once. More than one club I was at, but certainly I've known managers where they'll do it and they'll say it, and we'll all just look at each other and think, no, he's missed it. He's absolutely missed the point. Sometimes it's something very specific. The most common one is they are just too cagey, they are just too defensive, they are just too fearful. They're thinking about the opposition too much, and it's the most classic one that I know, that you've sat and worried about what the dangers are and forgot about what you've got. And did Thomas Tuchel change at all for Pep Guardiola? I don't think he did. I think Thomas Tuchel played Thomas Tuchel's best side, but I don't think Pep did. I think he looked at what was in the opposition and thought, well, if I have the ball for 80% of the game, then they can't damage us. Thing is, Chelsea are pretty good at keeping the ball as well. They're all right at it. Yeah. And if they don't, hell of a good at defending as well. So yeah, I mean, if you had it again, maybe Pep would do something completely different. And maybe you have to go through a wee bit of pain first. You know, to win that Champions League, you sometimes have to go a wee bit of pain. You know, Chelsea lost it against Manchester United, didn't they? Before they finally got their one against Bayern. And again, if you played the game tonight and changed it a wee bit, you had a different result. That's how close the teams were in the end. Yeah.
It was kind of it's just ludicrous moment where Thomas Tuchel is meeting Abramovich for the first time at this match for various reasons. The texters are on to me here about a few things. So, yes, Adrian, are you going to ask Pat about Roddy's favourite player or what? Yes, I am. So to my eternal shame here, it seems. So Brian, for instance, said, as punishment for your admission, this is in the conversation with Roddy earlier, of having little or no prior knowledge of Charlie Cook, I sentence you to admitting this lapse to Pat Nevin on air. I'm interested to hear Pat's response. Great interview with Roddy Doyle, says Brian. So there I am admitting to you, Charlie Cook. I mean, I'm au fait with Chopper Harris and a few of the boys, obviously, but Charlie Cook had passed me by. Scottish winger, I'm told. Is this an egregious error on my part, or is Roddy's choice of Charlie Cook as favourite Chelsea player ever a little bit niche?
It's not niche.
Right. This is just a shocker on my part, is it?
No, it's an age thing. It's just
yeah,
an age
but
thing.
I mean, I feel like if you were to mention quite a few of the Chelsea boys from 60s, 70s, they'd ring bells. I just haven't heard much about Charlie Cook.
No, Charlie was a fabulous player. I'd seen certain amounts of him. Again, a player who would be more suited to the game today, far more suited to the game today. He wasn't a tricky winger. He was a very skillful player who could play midfield to wing, to attack, creative. It slightly drove me mad because the day I arrived, everyone said the same thing. So you're the new Charlie Cook then?
Yeah, I mean...
And I got it from the day I arrived, because he's Scottish, he's come down from a smaller club, and I got it for years and years. And I'll tell you, to this day, I still get it. You're my favourite player apart from, and it's either Charlie Cook or Zola or Hazard. It's always them. I get it all the time. Now, a lot of people used to say this direct link. The Chelsea fans will say that it kind of starts with Cookie, right? So Charlie, and then there's been others, but they often mention my name kindly, although I'm not in that class. And then they say Zola, and then but then they used to say Mata, and then Hazard, and it was kind of, you can see that they're kind of all quite small players, very technical players, and Chelsea fans are big sets of Chelsea fans. That was their type of player, the type that they absolutely loved. But Cookie did this. Tell me a story about Cookie. I've met him. It's funny when someone says that to you, that you're the new or you're that person. Didn't meet him for 20 years after that. Never met him. And I'd heard so much about him, but I never met him because he'd gone away to live in America. And I'd read about him and I knew what he was doing. And then he just turned up one day at the club and we bumped into each other. It was just smiling of knowing each other, though we'd never met. This lovely smile. And my first question I asked him, and it was about the coaching he was doing, and he was doing that version of the Dutch coaching, and he was taking it all over America, and it was just so perfect for him, and he made a fortune out of it, I believe, and he's well loved over there, and he played in America near the end of his career as well. But I'm like a lot of people, had limited amount of time that I've seen him. I've seen all the footage there is of him basically now, with my time working at Chelsea. But Cookie would have been, he'd have been the Silva type, that. So now, taller than Silva and more direct than him, David Silva. But he was that type of player, and kind of unusual for his time.
Right.
And by the way, what a tash.
I just Googled it there. Yeah. No, I hear you. I'm hearing you were at the players' after party on Saturday, were you?
I was. And,
give us the goss. What's the players' party like in 2021?
A lot more sober than it was when I used to play.
I'd say so, yeah. They're all just sitting around, are they?
No, they weren't all just sitting around. Absolutely not. I'd actually just come back to the hotel, and they sent a car and said, look, get down to the do. They've got the players are all there. Some waves. Roman was there, the manager, obviously. And I'm actually not that into that sort of stuff, really. But I said, look, I'll leave it. But there was two other people there, the producer and the commentator. And they said, it'll look bad, mate. You got to go. All right. This is like 2 a.m. at this point in time. And I'm doing radio the next morning at 9. So, all right, I'll go for an hour. So I went down. You can always see the rest coming. So I went down there, and honestly, it was like walking into a Bond movie. You see those Bond sets. It's like an entire beautiful. It's basically used to be a warehouse, but it ain't a warehouse tonight. It's absolutely phenomenal amount of money put in this. I mean, had they lost, were City going to use it? I don't know. And it was on the riverfront, and there's all sorts of checks to get past and get in, and there's all sorts of limos and all that sort of stuff. And got in there, and by that time they'd all had a few, and some of them had maybe gone as well, but just strange things started happening. And then they're throwing the cup to each other and things like that. And you're sitting there in the European Cups there. I leant against the table once, nearly knocked the thing down. It was cobblestone. I just spattered the thing. And they're all just gone for it. And it was just nice to almost watch it a little bit. There's one lovely moment. I was talking to wee Billy Gilmore, and Billy and I kind of know each other a bit now.
Yeah.
And it had a few. It definitely had a few. He's got, Papa, have a selfie with me. And I'm going, it's probably the other way around, but yeah, all right. And he's giving it, and as we're doing it, Petr Cech walks over and he catches my eye and he goes, hi, Pat. And I went, all right. And I went to see him. Billy goes, wait a minute, Pierre. Palms him off because we're having a selfie. I think that's not supposed to.
Tell me Billy Gilmore is going to make it at Chelsea.
Oh yeah, no, he's brilliant.
He will. Yeah, he's so good.
It'll certainly will be, I think, by the end of next season.
Okay.
He'll be in, and he'll be first pick. He's that good.
Yeah.
And it might be even quite early next season, so he's fine. One of the other moments was with some of the people who work at Chelsea have been there since I played there, which is a really unusual thing. And one of the girls, Jane, she said, oh, come and meet Thomas. And I went, oh, it's okay. And she said, no, he'll be busy. No. Anyway, she drags Thomas to come over to meet me. The guy's sitting with a European Cup or Champions League. And he comes over, and he is honestly the loveliest man in the world. And he's sitting there, and his kids are falling asleep in his lap, and his wife's there, and they're up. But you can tell they're knackered. They want to go home. And we have this really lovely chat about the game and the Chelsea fans and what it was like and what he's learning about it. And then I said, do you know what, Thomas? We're now getting about 4 in the morning. I said, Thomas, you could leave, if you wanted. I know you're new here, but, your family are knackered. Anyway, about 5 minutes later, he left. And I thought, yeah, sensible guy. Half an hour later, he's back again without family.
Wow, good on him.
And yeah, because he had to do it. It's a special, fantastic night. And it was lovely. But so next, anyway, I get back home. Lots of other things. I met lots of other players, etc., and chatted. But I got back in, and I probably had an hour's sleep. And I was woken up by the phone, and it was radio. It was World Service. No, it was BBC News. Can you do an interview, Pat? I sounded like Barry White. It's like, when? Now. Honestly. I'd had one or two.
Yeah.
And honestly, if you ever get that, I never want to hear
we might dig it out. I think that could be worked into a little montage at the top with your music, maybe. God, that's so cool to get to hang out with them all. Who's a good person to get talking to in that Chelsea team for 5 minutes?
Anytime I've spoken to just about any of them, it's been cool.
Right.
They've been really nice. I quite like to have spoken to Havertz, but he was busy and left my line quite early. And I wasn't walking about trying to talk to people.
Yeah, sure.
I'm not like that. If you happen to come into the vicinity of somebody or they come over and talk to you, it's absolutely fine. I was quite happy just to watch from a distance. And I had other people at the club that I know at the club that are various parts of the club I was enjoying talking to. So not really into muscling into those situations. But when you meet someone like Jorginho, is just an absolute sweetie. Kante is just hilarious. He's just honestly the funniest ever. Really? There was a great... but undeliberately.
Okay.
Because there's a story once, and this sums up Kante, and it's the first time I'd ever heard this story about him. And stop me if I've told you before, but it was exactly the same at the party. So they used to get this thing with Chelsea a few years back. They get all the team in the huddle before the game, and they'd take it in turns. The leader was David Luiz, and would say, "Right, turn to make the speech today is," and you would say to somebody, and they would say a few words. We went to Kante once, "And Golo, your turn." Fantastic words, and Golo. He couldn't speak, and he was just too shy and looking down, and couldn't go away. He did nothing. He wouldn't say anything at all. He just sit there and smile like that. He said, "I actually think him and Roman Abramovich are related. They're exactly the same."
Oh, say boo.
You can't see anything. Just eyes down, can't see anything. So there's lots of different characters there, and they're not the characters you always think they are from a distance, and they never are. And why should they be? Because we form a characterisation of people from what we see from a distance, and then you get to know them, and they've asked them like kind of normal blokes with the same weaknesses and strengths as everybody else. Anything particularly worse than that, I'm afraid I can't tell you.
Yeah, no doubt. Listen, great stuff. Thanks so much.
Absolute pleasure. Just kind of one last line before I go. So the best line's been said to me this week, right? So I get to go over there. I get to go to Porto. I get to see my team Chelsea winning the Champions League. I go to that party. I get home, open the paper. My book's in the top 10 of the non-fiction list in the Sunday Times, right? And somebody sent me a text and said, "If Caroline made weekends, this is what it'd be like." So I've had the perfect weekend, and I couldn't be happier.
Okay, very good. Well, listen, put the feet up.
I will do.
Thanks very much, Pat.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward